DC Tyrant. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 226, Green Lantern Ring. Emperor Building. Underground Research Institute. 14th floor underground. In a huge glass-sealed tank, Jenny's bionic body is almost complete. In the glass-sealed tank, it is no longer green nutrient solution, but turbid yellow nuclear energy liquid. The embryo is floating in the turbid yellow nuclear energy liquid. The curled-up body is hideous and ugly, with white bones and barbs protruding from the surface. The cuticle is thick and feels like frosted. The curled-up body alone is more than 4 meters tall. Once stretched out, it will be a 13-meter tall, ugly monster. Badi narrowed his eyes and stood like a pine tree. The strong body under the white windbreaker stood here like a mountain. Beside him and in front of him, there were researchers under Luther's command who were carefully adjusting Jenny's bionic body, working suppressedly and nervously beside Badi. Badi's right hand supported his left hand, and his thumb gently rubbed the palm of his hand. He stood still among the busy and nervous white coats around him, staring at Jenny's bionic body, his thoughts running wild. To be honest, he was not completely sure and would not change the future at all. Because in this world, every extra dust will lead to a different atmosphere, which will cause a chain reaction. This is most obvious in himself. He came to this world and changed too many people and things. Krypton, Jor-El, Superman died in his hands. Fire, Zod, Deathstroke, Atom, Firestorm, Constantine, Captain Ice, Raven, Poison Ivy, Flash, Batman, Cyborg, Croc, and so on. In addition, there are also various treatments of heroes, and many of them died in his hands. For example, Billy Batson was directly regarded as a threat by Badi, and was crushed to death. Then he used genes to copy a bionic body, input the control program, and imprisoned in the Emperor building, waiting for rescue, waiting for him to become Shazam. There was also Green Arrow's company destroyed by Badi. He was not as lucky as Batman to escape from Badi's hands. After several waves of pursuit, Green Arrow disappeared from the world, and Star City was directly controlled by Badi. There are many smaller and less famous heroes or villains who have been educated by Badi, or have been killed. This is a bloody and cruel road. All the famous heroes and villains in comics will be his enemies one by one. Few people are worthy of his trust. This is a painful, twisted, lonely road of conquest, and he is against the world. Only a woman who can love him deeply can touch his heart, warm him, and calm his inner pain. Therefore, even if it is possible to change the current situation, or it is of little benefit to himself, Badi still wants to save Jenny's life. He can do his best, and do the best he can. The scene at the beginning is still vivid. Jenny exploded and destroyed in front of him. The silver ring was flying in the flames. The temperature in his hand still had a deep burning feeling. Replace the self-exploding Jenny with Jenna's bionic body, and restore the scene of that moment as much as possible, and try not to involve other things. Badi rubbed his palms and exerted force, and his breathing slowed down slightly. The thoughtful look in his eyes disappeared. Master, the alien spaceship coming from the direction of Andromeda is expected to land in the coastal city, Magoro Beach in 47 minutes and 50 seconds. Hera suddenly communicated and reminded. In the past few days, Badi's mind was completely on dealing with the Flash and Jenna's bionic body, and he had not paid attention to this spaceship. In fact, in the past 10 years, there have been spaceships that have crashed on the Earth, but they were not of much value, and Badi did not care too much. However, hearing that it fell in the coastal city, Badi's eyes were stern, and the Green Lantern ring appeared involuntarily in his mind. Night. The night was as dark as a curtain, covering the starry sky. The bright stars were just like small light holes that penetrated the curtain of the night, unwilling to struggle, transmitting their own light, and brightening the starry sky. California. Coastal city, Magoro Beach. The lighthouse stands on the edge of the beach rock, rotating its light in the dark night, guiding the way for lost ships returning to the sea. Waves hit the round stones, splashing white foam. In the dark night, there is only the smell of the sea and the sound of waves hitting each other. The wind blows. 3 people walked out of the darkness. Hal Jordan, he was wearing a brown jacket, which was a souvenir left to him by his father. He witnessed his father die in a plane crash in front of him and was drowned in the sea of fire. This jacket, which symbolizes his father, represents his father. Whenever there is a major event, wearing this jacket is like having the faith and confidence given to him by his father. He stepped on the round stone by the waves, raised his head, and looked into the distance. His resolute face outlined a hopeful look in the dark night. The night was still very dark, and the stars were always shining. Behind him, Victor put on the only remaining set of exoskeleton armor, stepped on the stone with iron boots, and looked around like a rabbit alert to the wolf. Then at the end, Diana had a head of curly black hair, and even in the dark, she looked like a goddess with a breathtakingly beautiful face. She was a superhero as beautiful as Aphrodite, as smart as Athena, more agile than Hermes, and stronger than Hercules. She was a striking female representative in the world. She had a slender figure, and the close-fitting Amazon armor outlined the perfect contours of her body. On her slender right waist hung the lasso of truth and the sword of Vulcan, that could split atoms. On her back hung a round shield-shaped divine shield, and on her wrists were protected by silver bracelets, limiting her amazing divine power. The iron boots stepped on the small round stones on the beach. The wind on the beach blew her curly hair. Her eyes were firm and persistent. She raised her head with a serious face, revealing the beautiful neck outline like a swan. Under the bright stars and moonlight, she looked into the sky. As long as he shows up, I will make him confess his crimes under the lasso of truth. Diana's voice was firm, and her eyes flashed with a firm will. The wind blew her hair, and she was fearless with her voice. At this time, the waves on the sea surface gradually increased, and the white waves kept hitting the coast strongly. Wow. In the dark night, a strong man in a tight golden fish scale costume rushed out from the sparkling sea. The Sea King held a trident in his hand and stepped on the surging waves. Under the moon and stars, his eyes flashed strong and angry. He held the trident tightly and stepped on the waves. The wind blew his anger coldly. He can't bear the wrath of Atlantis. Chapter 227. You have a strong will to overcome fear. Welcome to join the Green Lantern Corps. California. Seaside City, Magoro Beach. In the dark night, the stars are twinkling, and a meteor streaks across the night sky. I don't know how many children and lovers, when they see the night sky, hold their hands to their chests, close their eyes and pray, praying that the meteor that sweeps by will make their wishes come true. However, in fact, this meteor is the end of the greatest hero, the greatest Green Lantern, Abinsu. In that small spaceship, Abinsu's body has no breath, his eyes are closed, his red skin is pale, his lips are white, bloodless, and his red face is tightly frowned. Even in death, he is still worried, anxious, and uneasy. It is the parallax monster that breaks free from control, bringing fear to the entire universe. That uneasiness, even in his death, still does not disappear. His remaining will made the Green Lantern ring flicker, and he was barely able to wrap his body in the Green Lantern costume. On his chest, there was a wound with granulation tissue, and there was a yellowish fear energy flickering, surrounded by the weak energy of the Green Lantern. When he found the next successor, passed it on to the next Green Lantern, and protected the safety of the stars, his weak will would dissipate, and he would entrust everything to the next hero. The hero passed away, and turned into a meteor. However, this would not be the end. With the passing of the hero, the later ones would inherit the will of the former. This heroic heart would not change, and there would be a dazzling hero who would stand up and fight against all evil. The spacecraft began to penetrate the atmosphere, and the transparent thick glass surface rubbed violently to produce a burning red flame. The blue tail flame of the azure thruster behind it also reached the end. Under the continuous breakthrough of the atmosphere, it made a red click sound like a stuck gear, and was no longer able to move forward. After a 3 light-year journey, looking for the next generation of successors, they came to this blue planet, and there was not much energy left. The spaceship made a click sound, and finally it was unable to eject the blue flame of the thrusters. It went out, and was dragged into the atmosphere by the Earth's gravity. The friction on the surface produced a fierce and scorching red light, and it fell towards the seaside city in Magoro Beach like a meteorite, dragging a long tail flame. Hal raised his head high, and the waves beat out white waves, forming foam floating on the surface. The wind blew his hair fiercely, and his brown jacket slapped his high chest. His face looked a little silent in the darkness, with a sad admiration. In the dark night, he silently watched the falling spaceship. He knew the deeds of a Bensu, so when he saw this moment, he had respect and admiration for the greatest Green Lantern of the previous generation. Hal's eyes were filled with hope, but also with moist sadness. His hands suddenly clenched into fists, shaking tightly. This is the end of the hero, but the will not fall. The Green Lantern is always on, shining for eternity. Hal muttered to himself as he stared at the night, the spaceship with a long tail flame and a red surface from friction. In the whistling sea breeze, he suddenly remembered the oath of the Green Lantern. The light of will is always on, and it will never be extinguished for eternity, because there will be a successor. In his memory, he became the successor of the greatest Green Lantern, the next greatest Green Lantern, safeguarding the 2814th sector of the universe, including the Earth, and becoming a member of the Justice League, protecting this sector, the universe, and the Earth. Is this a hero who protects the universe? Diana raised her head and looked into the distance. Her vision was clearer than that of Hal, who was a human. The red figure in the spaceship was vaguely seen by her eyes. She did not feel as deeply as Hal, but the death of a hero deserved everyone to mourn for him. The wind blew in the black liquid, and the sound of the waves hitting the waves became more intense, and the white waves surged. The wet water vapor stuck to the faces of several people, bringing the coldness of ice. Hal Jordan, Victor Stone, Diana Prince, Arthur Curry. Several people silently faced the sea breeze, looking at the wind with their hair ruffled, with admiration, silence, and mourning in their hearts, mourning for the passing of the former heroes. Boom. The spaceship hit the coast strongly, just 700 meters away from them. The huge airwave rolled in an instant, and rushed towards them violently. The rocks flew high and hid all around. The waves splashed white, steaming, and rising hot water vapor. The strong wind squinted Hal's eyes. He used his hands to cover the dust brought by the strong wind, squinting his eyes, and looking at the spaceship. A basketball-sized stone shot straight at Hal. Bang! Diana reached behind her, and took out the divine shield. She took a step forward and slapped the rocks that were splashed by the strong wind. The rocks weighing more than 100 kilograms were easily slapped away by her. They fell to the ground and rolled to a stop. A pit of more than 10 meters appeared at the place where the spaceship fell. The small spaceship was emitting wisps of steam inside. The sea water flowed down along the side, cooling the surface of the spaceship, and the steam rose up with a sizzling sound. Hal Jordan took a step towards the spaceship in the cold sea breeze, his eyes moist and determined. The three people next to him walked with him to the crash site of the small spaceship. The smell of the scorched earth and the hot temperature of the steam instantly reached their noses and skin. Diana held the divine shield in her left hand and the sword of Vulcan in her right hand. She stood tall and looked around. Aquaman held the trident beside him, and the waves behind him were surging. Victor was nervous, and his fists were slightly sweaty. He controlled his rapid breathing slightly, and warned the people around him. Hal stepped closer, staring at a Bensu who was getting closer and closer. In the dilapidated spaceship, the Green Lantern ring was flickering with light, which was the last will of the greatest Green Lantern. He approached the spaceship. After being washed by the sea water, the temperature of the surface of the spaceship had dropped. Hal opened the hatch of the fallen and dilapidated spaceship, and the sea water flowed into it. A Bensu's body was lying on his back on the seat, dead. Hal saw this scene and couldn't help but overlap it with his memory. There was a sad mourning in his heart. His eyes were wet, looking at a Bensu. Then, the Green Lantern ring flickered, and in Hal's sight, it automatically broke away from a Bensu's fingers, and a Bensu's dead body with a white and red glow appeared in front of Hal. Hal turned his eyes to the Green Lantern ring wrapped in green will energy. The Green Lantern ring slowly moved to Hal's eyes, reflecting a green color on Hal's face. Hal took a deep breath, and the sorrowful mourning disappeared as his eyes opened and closed, and a determined look followed. I will inherit your will. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the Green Lantern ring. Suddenly, the Green Lantern ring trembled slightly, and the green light was so bright that it was blinding, which made Hal's eyes sting with pain. He couldn't help but squint his eyes and used his hand as a shield for the green light. Just when Hal hadn't caught the ring yet, the lantern ring flew straight into the dark night sky and flew into the darkness in the distance. In the dark night sky, a green light flashed. The unexpected action of the lantern ring made several people pause for a moment. Hal was stunned. His hand was suspended in the air, and he stopped moving. His hands couldn't help but tremble, and a huge panic spread in his heart. No. He turned his head in panic. His panic and fear in his heart could not be stopped. His body was shaking, and he watched with horror as the green lantern ring passed through the green long bright light and left his sight. In the darkness, the deep darkness of the environment, like the darkness of the abyss, a white figure came. The green lantern ring, shining brightly, passed through the green track, stopped above the head of the white figure, reflecting a tall body, a tough face carved by a knife and an axe, and eyes that revealed a will that had never wavered. The white figure seemed to feel the suddenness. His steps stagnated, and he stopped moving forward. Naturally, he raised his right hand. The green lantern ring reflected green light and quickly put it on his middle finger. In the dark night, the green light was like the light of hope that just emerged from the horizon, instantly lighting up this dark night and pulling out an extremely powerful green light of will. Intelligent life has been locked. Bamilodi from Krypton, you have a strong will to overcome fear. Welcome to join the Green Lantern Corps. Chapter 228 Aquaman, Diana. Badi rubbed his middle finger with his right thumb. The green lantern ring had a metal and plastic texture, very light, as if he didn't wear a ring. The green light that was always on had gone out on his hand. Badi didn't recite the oath, and he couldn't use the lantern ring yet, but for him, this was an unexpected surprise. This was beyond his expectations. He came here just to kill the Justice League members who were causing trouble for him, and then travel through time to save the desperate self-destructing figure. Unexpectedly, he got a famous ring. He was amused. At this moment, a sudden scream in the sky startled, and a cold light crossed the night sky and tore through the darkness. A suffocating stream of light was drawn in the darkness. The trident of the Seeking crossed the sky like a javelin that appeared in the darkness of the deep universe and was thrown towards the figure of Badi. The Seeking stepped on the thousands of layers of waves, and his strong body under the golden fish scale tights shone brightly under the starlight, flashing above the waves. Looking down from above, you dare to kill Orm. The angry eyes of the Seeking were like a killer whale hunting in the deep sea, cold and furious. Bamilodi destroyed all his efforts, the beautiful and peaceful coexistence between Atlantis and humans, and his half-brother was directly killed, making it difficult for him to hide his anger. The area around Bamilodi's eyes was like a branding iron, branding the skin red. The red light in his eyes gathered. Two thick heat lines pierced through the air, and red rays lit up in the darkness, piercing through the folds of the air, and shot towards the Seeking's trident that crossed the sky. Bang! The heat line carried a huge impact force, directly colliding with this magical artifact, exploding in the air, and a hurricane swept in all directions. The flames shone in the dark night. The Seeking's trident was like a kite that had lost its line, spinning wildly, throwing it higher into the night sky, and constantly spinning with a whistling sound. A surge of waves, like the roar of a giant dragon, kept surging, and lifted the angry figure of the Seeking high above. He raised his hand, and caught the rotating trident of the Seeking. He couldn't help but tremble the weapon in his hand. He was shocked and looked at the people below with a pair of angry eyes with horror. In the dark night, the Seeking seemed to be standing on the head of the Azure Dragon, high above, holding the trident like a hero in mythology, and his angry eyes fell on Badi, but he couldn't help but be frightened and cautious. Best time. Diana held a divine shield in front. The Titan's strong thigh lines were beautiful and powerful, and the steel boots stepped on the ground, crushing the many round stones on the beach. From her body, there surged a heroic spirit of a female hero who broke through thousands of troops. One person rushed towards Badi with the momentum of a charging army. The airflow tore white ribbons from both sides of her body, reflecting her strong and outstanding face, heroic and beautiful. Badi's eyes were stern, and his feet seemed to take root in the ground. His fist came out from his ribs, breaking through the sound barrier, and a red scream was heard, welcoming the shield that seemed to be a charging army. Boom. In an instant, the fist and the shield collided, and a loud sound rang out, echoing throughout the night sky. A huge airflow spread out, and a hurricane blew. The ground sank with a radius of nearly 500 meters. The two people fell suddenly, and the crushed stones rose up without weight. The airflow rolled away fiercely, and the hurricane spread far away. The wind blew Badi's windbreaker, making a rustling sound. His face was cold and eye-catching in the night. The world was still, as if they had been struck into a vacuum. The two of them maintained their positions at the moment of the contest, increasing each other's power to compete. Diana's resolute and heroic face peeked out from behind the shield, slowly raised, and her beautiful eyes were filled with anger. "You are the one who crushed 50 million human lives with one foot." Badi looked at them coldly, supporting himself with his fists and shields. Neither he nor Diana released their strength, but both sides slowly and continuously increased their strength. The cracked ground under their feet made their calves sink into it. The surrounding air was filled with fear, heavy as if in panic, and was condensed by the wrestling between the two. "It was me," Badi answered coldly. His cold eyes met Diana's angry eyes. This answer made Diana even more furious, and flames almost burst out of her eyes. "Ah!" Diana roared from the bottom of her throat, and behind the shield, the protective silver bracelets collided with each other, and a huge amount of divine energy and impact force burst out. With a humming sound, the divine energy contained in her body burst out. The silver bracelets collided, releasing a huge force, which was even louder than the previous collision. The huge sound waves kept forming waves on the surface of the air, rolling and swinging far away. A force higher than magic rushed towards Badi's body, and waves were transmitted from the shield he was touching. This divine energy was vast and boundless, and it was transmitted to Badi's body in a mighty way, from the finger bones, cells, and arm bones, so that Badi felt that there were some slight cracks in his finger bones. For more than 10 years, Badi did not feel that he was injured. At this moment, under Diana's attack, there were some slight fractures in his finger bones. It can be imagined that this daughter of Zeus did have the power to compete with him. Badi's figure retreated with the fluctuation of the divine energy, and floated into the sky. His eyes swept across the Sea King standing on the surging waves, and fixed his eyes on Diana. Divine power is an energy that is more mysterious than magic. This energy also has the ability to directly destroy Kryptonian cells, but at the same time, Badi also felt that divine power is not completely able to weaken Kryptonian cells like magic. Badi, who had just come into contact with it, did not draw any conclusions about the specific composition of the mystery. He just felt that it was very different from magic, but it still had a very strong restraint and destructive power against Kryptonian cells. Diana's hand shook, and the protective silver bracelet on her wrist fell off. A little golden light suddenly lit up in the depths of her eyes, spreading all over. There was no wind around her, and an unparalleled momentum broke out in the cracked pit. The air was condensed to the point of suffocation, and the stones were weightless, and kept rising and shattering, and the curled black hair was flying wildly. Her face was angry, and her skin glowed with a crystal-like golden light, making her look like a golden Valkyrie in the dark night. Paradise Island, Amazon warrior, Diana Prince. I want you to plead guilty for the crimes of 50 million human lives. As Diana stepped on her steel boots, a huge wave erupted from her footsteps, causing the entire pit to suddenly fall again, deeper. Her golden eyes were angry, and her graceful neck with her head raised up shone with unparalleled swan-like beauty in the dark night. Suddenly, the next moment, she disappeared from the spot, leaped into the sky, and raised her sword to slash at Badi. At the same time, the waves that Aquaman was stepping on were like a roaring dragon, surging and roaring, and shot towards Badi. He stepped on the waves, raised the trident of Aquaman, and stabbed at Badi. Chapter 229. Bloodshed in the dark sky. It was a dark night with bright stars. The river that Aquaman was walking on was azure blue, like a blue galaxy under a bright starry sky. He stepped on the sky and attacked Badi. He could not fly, although he could jump thousands of meters and use the magic power in his body to stay suspended in the air. Strictly speaking, he could not fly. Therefore, he could only use his power more by walking on the waves and connecting with the earth and the sea. Badi's windbreaker fluttered under the starry sky, and his cheeks bulged. The cold current blew out instantly, froze the waves under his feet, spreading to his body and the surging sea current under his feet, freezing him into an ice sculpture, temporarily unable to move. Then, Diana, who was bursting with all her power, came up to attack. The two of them had a symphony in the sky, bursting out with a huge sound, and each flew upside down and stood in the sky. The two of them were unusually eye-catching under the starry sky. As a white windbreaker fluttered, his temperament was as majestic as a mountain, overlooking the world. A figure with a graceful figure, crystal skin emitting a gorgeous golden light, flashing the demeanor of a peerless beauty under the night sky. The two crossed the sky, crossed the starry sky, screamed and exploded, and clashed again, and the sound of huge shocks continued. Even with Badi's current physical strength, he dared not let Diana hold the sword of Vulcan full of divine power to stab him. The sword of Vulcan is a divine weapon that can split atoms at the atomic level, plus the destructive power of divine power to Krypton cells. Faintly, it can restrain Badi's strong physical fitness. But he is too strong. In the past 10 years, he has continuously and abundantly absorbed solar energy every day, reaching a level that is stronger than the original Superman, plus superb fighting skills. Even if the divine power has a certain ability to restrain Krypton cells, Badi is enough to fight with this powerful body. Diana's graceful figure is agile. No matter what, there is no way to easily cut Badi. Zeng. The two of them collided in the sky, and a huge metal collision sound was heard. It was Badi who seized an opportunity and punched the side of Diana's Vulcan sword, knocking the Vulcan sword to the ground with a loud metal collision sound. Diana's golden face was angry and stern. The hilt of the sword she held tightly cracked her knuckles. The huge impact force almost knocked the Vulcan sword out of her hand. A trace of golden blood flowed out of her knuckles. Badi's power undoubtedly shocked her. She burst out the divine power sealed in her body, but she couldn't take it down for a while. She hurt Badi, which made her heart tremble. Her eyes were stern and filled with deep horror. This is already a godlike power. Diana's heart was shaken. Her power was already close to that of a god. She had the blood of the supreme god, Zeus, in her body. Although she didn't know that Zeus was her father, she knew how huge and powerful the divine power born from that powerful blood was. At least in Paradise Island, among the entire Amazon tribe, no one can stand shoulder to shoulder with her and compete with her. That's why, under her mother's instructions, she wore the protective silver bracelet to cover up her amazing divine power. Now the divine power she released couldn't even take down Badi, which shocked her to the bottom of her heart. Badi in the outside world was not much inferior to her, and she even fell behind in the battle. This was simply unbelievable to her. This was already a godlike power. The so-called Olympus gods were only this powerful. Diana's golden eyes were tightly stern, and she held up the divine shield to resist Badi's frontal attack. Bang! Diana's divine shield withstood an extremely exaggerated force impact and completely withstood the force of a planet-level strongman head-on. The golden divine energy on the surface of the divine shield was broken by a blow, turning into dots of starlight and dissipating with the power. This powerful force directly knocked her away. Diana's body was like a meteor, streaking across the night sky and flying into space. Her smooth shoulders and back rubbed out a burning red supersonic heat. The huge force, weakened by the divine shield, still had a huge and terrifying force transmitted to her hands. She was knocked into the sky, and she felt as if her hand bones were directly hit and were about to break. The force was directly transmitted to her arms, shaking her internal organs, making her unable to help but darken from the abdomen. There was a fishy blood in her throat, which she bit with her teeth, stubbornly refusing to let go. Her lips were tightly closed, and a trace of golden blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth, floating in the sky. Just when Badi wanted to catch up again and kill Diana completely, it was at this time Aquaman escaped from the ice. His strong body twisted in the air into a statue of power and beauty like a Greek sculpture. The trident flew out of his hand in the air, emitting a blue magic light, screaming out a sonic boom, and threw it at Badi again. Badi suddenly stopped in the air, his eyes cold. The trident was also a divine weapon, possessing the magical energy to control the ocean. This magic was drawn out by Aquaman, and it was even more harmful to Badi than the divine energy in Diana's body. This seemed to be a problem related to Krypton's physique. The magic seemed to be more harmful to Badi, and although the divine power also had the destructive power to Krypton's physique, it did not seem to have the fatal feeling of magic. Badi felt this reason in the battle with Diana just now. Obviously, a lot of magic is derived from divine energy, but the higher divine energy does not have the weak nature of magic energy and causes great damage. It seems that divine energy is a high-end energy that attacks both the will and the body. It can not only destroy the body, but also has the effect of shaking people's will. But the firmness of Badi's will is definitely not something that Diana's divine energy can defeat. Even the Green Lantern ring slipped from Hal's hand and chose a more powerful him. It is conceivable how intense Badi's resistance to divine energy is. As for magic, unless it is a powerful soul magic, simple elemental magic and water magic directly attack Badi's body from the body, which will cause more damage to Badi. The Trident, with the blue magic, once again split the night sky, screaming and exploding. Badi's eyes adjusted the most powerful shockwave power with his heat vision. Heat vision has two power modes. One is to build an explosive shockwave with the energy in the body, and release the heat vision with a powerful shockwave. The other is a pure heat vision released by super high temperature clusters, which is famous for its high temperature. In the Dark Knight, the heat vision and the Trident exploded with the most violent impact and collision. A huge sonic boom cloud appeared in an instant, and was shattered by the strong impact in the next moment. The Trident was thrown high again by the impact, spinning like a windmill in the bright sky of the night. But this time, Aquaman was unable to catch the Trident. Badi flew in the air, and when Aquaman controlled the Trident to fly back to him, Badi had already flown towards him. Aquaman was horrified. He was now in the air, without the connection of the Earth's ocean, and his strength dropped by several levels. He was not as strong as Diana in the first place, and now facing Badi in the air was even more tragic. He controlled the seawater behind him to surge up crazily, trying to connect to himself and use the power of the Earth's ocean to deal with Badi. However, Badi flew faster and was already in front of him. Under the horrified gaze of the Sea King, Badi stepped on his chest, causing his body to sink in, his sternum to stab out, and the seawater below lost control of the Sea King and fell like heavy rain. The Trident, spinning like a windmill in the sky, flew back, and Badi raised his left hand and caught the artifact. In the Dark Knight, Badi's eyes were cold. He took the Trident with his hand, stepped on the Sea King like stepping on a surfboard, and stepped on the Sea King's sternum to sink. Blood splattered, and blood was spilled in the Dark Knight and the bright starry sky, showing the posture of an unrivaled god. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 230. Even without the Green Lantern ring, I will still be a Green Lantern, and my heart will not change. Hal felt a chill in his heart, and he fell to the ground. The seawater flowed in along the hole made by the spaceship next to him, and soaked his pants and thighs at his feet. The cold seawater penetrated his skin, stimulating him, just like the stimulating coldness of cold well water in winter. It was so cold that goosebumps appeared on his skin. The cold seawater penetrated the skin of his thighs and spread. His spine and bones felt a deep and cold chill rising up his body and reaching his brain. His eyes were staring in disbelief, as if he had lost his soul, and couldn't believe it. The Green Lantern ring left him. The moment Bamulodi appeared, he no longer had the qualifications to be a Green Lantern. Damn it. Hal suddenly clenched his fists tightly, and with a fierce look in his eyes, he punched the ground with his fists, hitting the cold sea water and splashing white waves. The cold sea water hit his face. He was filled with resentment. His will and courage were defeated by Bamulodi, who let the Green Lantern ring escape from him and chose a tyrant who intended to rule the earth. Fuck. Hal roared and slammed his hands on the ground. He gritted his teeth and glared as he vented his resentment. The seawater was splashed with white waves, which were cold and scattered everywhere. Without the Green Lantern ring, it would be difficult for the Green Lantern Corps to help the earth. Facing the army of Bamulodi, it would be difficult for them to fight against Bamulodi with Atlantis and Paradise Island. Barry was in his hands, and his life and death were uncertain. Bruce lurked beside him, and he was in great danger. And he had nothing. He had lost the Green Lantern ring. He was no longer a Green Lantern. He could not find an assistant for the Green Lantern Corps. How could he fight against Bamulodi? In the sky, the night was still dark, and the bright stars brought a shining night sky, a cloudless night sky. Batty's eyes were cold. He took the trident in his hand and stepped on Aquaman like he was stepping on a surfboard. He stepped on Aquaman's sternum and blood splattered. In the dark night, under the bright starry sky, he showed the posture of an unrivaled god. Bang! Suddenly, Batty's face was cold, and he stepped hard under the bright starlight, trampling the world. Aquaman's chest sank, and he vomited blood weakly. The fish scale tights showed the white bones with blood. Blood burst out from his chest, and his internal organs were almost crushed by Batty's foot. His body was stressed and bent like a shrimp, rubbing against the burning temperature. He bled from the air and fell to the ground, smashing a big pit, and cracks spread all over. The seawater was swayed away by the impact in an instant, and then flowed back. From the cracked ground, the cold seawater seeped in and flowed towards Aquaman, wailing for their king. The body of the Sea King twitched subconsciously in the pit. His eyes were blurred, and he was in a daze. Batty had completely destroyed his body, disrupting all the magic control tracks. His body was injured more severely than ever before, and there was almost no way to recover. He trembled and twitched, his fingers kept trembling, and he wanted to struggle, but it was useless. The blood flowed and mixed with the seawater, emitting a bloody and salty smell. Victor stared, and couldn't help but roared, and his breath was choked in his nose for a moment. He took a step, and wanted to run to the position of the Sea King. However, no. The next moment, he couldn't help but stretch his hand forward, as if he wanted to catch that moment back, and shouted loudly in fear. Batty stood in the sky, in the black, unusually striking. The wind blew his black hair wildly and coldly, reflecting his cold and ruthless face, and his windbreaker rustled. The Sea King's trident was thrown down by him, piercing out a terrifying shrieking sonic boom, once again crossing the entire night. This was the third time that the Sea King's trident was thrown. The trident was like a spear that suddenly appeared in the abyss of the night, tearing the night sky and nailing towards the Sea King's chest, sinking deeply into the Sea King's chest, nailing him to the ground. The Sea King's body, like a frightened fish, bounced up and then fell down again because his chest was nailed tightly by the trident. His hands and feet bounced down, and blood seeped out and mixed with the seawater. His head tilted to the side, his eyes were half open and half closed, turbid. Silently, gradually, more seawater seeped into this big pit. Fresh blood emerged. Victor's eyes were blank, his fingers were trembling, his mouth was trembling, as if he wanted to say something. His face was pale, and he ran madly towards the direction of the Sea King, and the splashing waves were like the white of a funeral, the color of a farewell. Batty's eyes swept over the body of Aquaman, Victor, and Hal, who was staring at him with red eyes, and looked like he wanted to swallow him. He ignored them, and turned to fly towards Diana, who had been knocked out of space, leaving a sonic boom trail. Batty's eyes deeply stimulated Hal's heartache. Bamulodi. Hal clenched his fists, trembling all over. His neck was tense, his aorta was protruding, and his face was hideous and terrifying. They have lost enough. On this road of confrontation, too many lives have been lost. Everyone was prepared to die, but when the moment really came, the most painful thing on the road that made them heartbroken was not their own death. It was seeing every friend, every comrade in arms and friend with the same ideals, passing away one by their side, being killed by Bamulodi one by one, and extinguishing the fire of life one by one. The Justice League, starting with Superman, was completely destroyed by Bamulodi. The Lady of Shangdu who helped them died without a trace. Jor-El, who was protecting his son, split his consciousness into 3 parts. He tried his best to protect his son, and died completely in the hands of Bamulodi. Barry, his legs were broken, in the hands of Bamulodi. Bruce, even abandoned his own body, and his safety, life, and death were unpredictable. Hal, who had witnessed all this, was almost driven crazy. Every loss of a comrade, the death of a life for a common goal, died in front of him with his own blood. All this made Hal's heart extremely painful, struggling in the abyss of pain. He wished he could sacrifice himself for them in exchange for their lives. And the culprit, who was extremely evil, was just in the night sky. The bright stars became the background of Badi, setting off his supreme and majestic style. His cold eyes looked down on the world and regarded them as ants blocking the road. This almost drove Hal crazy, staring at the white figure that was going away with red and angry eyes. I need strength. Tear him down from the sky and avenge all those who sacrificed. Hal gritted his teeth, his face tensed with angry veins, trembling deeply, breathing angrily, and turned his head to look at Abinsur's body. On Abinsur's body, there was yellow fear energy in the part of the right chest where the flesh buds were turned out, the fear energy of the Parallax monster. Without the Green Lantern ring, I will still be the Green Lantern, and my heart will not change. Hal stretched out his hand, and the fear energy quickly spread to his palm like a snake, climbed up his arm, swam among the blue veins, swam to his chest, and distorted his face. Hal lowered his head and growled deeply. Hal Jordan, I have a strong will to overcome fear. Fear. You sit for me. Chapter 231 Blackface Amanda Waller. The night passed by. Diana's bare shoulders rubbed out a burning breath. She was like a foreign object in the foam and was punched out of the Earth's atmosphere by Badi. Muffled. A silent vibration. Her back hit an abandoned satellite. The impact force was offset by the atmosphere, and because it flew too far, it was offset a lot. The satellite was only hit by her back and sank apart. With the impact force, it slowly moved towards the deep space. Diana's eyes widened, and she felt the huge force on her body. She couldn't help but straighten her chest, and her slender waist arched forward. She let out a sigh from the depths of her throat. Her beautiful face flashed a look of pain for a moment, and she let out a breath from her throat and returned to normal. Diana's handsome eyebrows were slightly frowned, and her eyes looked at her arm in horror. Her left hand, the left hand under the divine shield, was shaking constantly. The muscles inside were constantly spasming and twitching. The blood was twitching and trembling. At that moment, the divine energy of the whole arm was dispersed by Badi's punch. The huge and terrifying force impacted her arm muscles, causing her arm to twitch and tremble, and the bones seemed to be so numb that they were about to break. Suddenly, her left hand clenched violently, and the golden divine power flowed from her shoulder to her arm, passing through her elbow, forearm, to her clenched fist, and once again restored her fist that was hard enough to hit diamonds. Diana's beautiful face was stern, and she stared at Badi who rushed up from below, as if facing a great enemy. Badi's white figure was covered in the flames caused by supersonic friction. In the white sound barrier, he rushed towards the universe, and rushed towards Diana. Diana hung the sword of the god of fire on her waist, and her whole body turned over in the weightless environment of space. Her beautiful heroic posture was agile and flexible. When turning over, she took the lasso of truth from her waist. The lasso of truth swung, stretched, and glowed with golden light, like a snake, and rolled up the 30-meter long artificial satellite. The lasso tightened in the next moment. Diana pulled the lasso tightly, and the entire 30-meter long satellite was directly pulled by her. The lasso was tight, turned over, and smashed down on the head of Badi who rushed up from the earth. Badi collided head-on with the abandoned satellite, and penetrated directly through it. The entire abandoned satellite was directly broken into two pieces. Steel and mechanical parts continued to overflow and float in space. In an instant, in front of Badi, the lasso of truth, which was emitting golden light, was transformed by divine power into countless whip shadows, covering his eyes. The shadows of the lasso were all over the sky, surrounding and forcing Badi to stop his speed. Snap. Suddenly, a fast lasso whipped at Badi's chest. The strong force and destructive energy directly broke the surface of Badi's clothes. His body stagnated, and the clothes in front of his chest turned into particles and broke apart. Under the impact, he shook, revealing his hard chest. A white mark was whipped in his chest, and a stinging pain was transmitted to Badi's skin, making him frown. He had not felt any physical pain for a long time. Then, the memory particles of the clothes gathered again, and formed clothes again, returning to their original state. Badi's eyes burned red, and he adjusted the thermal vision to shockwave mode. In the vacuum of the universe, the red thermal vision penetrated the dark starry sky and hit the truth lasso, bursting out a series of silent wave airflows, breaking the truth lasso that was transformed by all the divine energy. The recovery speed of the truth lasso was extremely fast. In the universe, it was like a flexible golden snake, infinitely extending. Just when Badi retracted his gaze, the lasso of truth stretched out in circles, layer upon layer, and tightened in an instant, tightening Badi like a mummy, tightly binding him. Diana's eyebrows were stern, and the divine energy she gathered was madly input into the lasso of truth. However, in the next moment, Badi, like a mummy, stretched out his arms forcefully, opened a gap in the lasso of truth, and stretched out a big hand from it, grabbing the lasso of truth at once. He pulled it hard. Diana staggered in space, her eyes shrank, and she pulled the lasso of truth hard, gritting her teeth, and pulling it tight, wrestling with Badi in space. The big hand that stretched out from the lasso of truth rolled up the lasso of truth little by little, rolling up the palm of her hand into a thick layer. Damn you, you tyrannical fellow. Diana's teeth were about to be crushed to pieces as Badi pulled her closer little by little. She had no way to resist Badi's terrifying power. Suddenly, Diana released the lasso of truth, and Badi leaned back for a moment. In an instant, Diana drew the sword of the god of fire from her waist, exuding golden divine energy. With the divine shield, she raised her sword and slashed at Badi, who was tied up like a seed. Badi's eyes glowed red again, and the heat vision shockwave mode shot directly, shooting away the truth lasso, and then hitting Diana's shield again, knocking Diana far away, and knocking her into the deep space. Badi narrowed his eyes, chased after her, and punched Diana's defensive shield again, knocking her into the universe, like a human chasing a football, constantly hitting Diana, and then meeting her again. The two kept flying and colliding in the sky, silently exploding with violent light and energy collisions. Earth, a certain encrypted channel. 15 countries on Earth, formed an alliance organization, and the Sky Society. Amanda Waller, held an emergency meeting. Everyone, this is an opportunity. This kind of power is terrifying. It can move freely in space. Who is fighting him? The Amazon princess. Do we need to take action? Should we take this opportunity to destroy him with a nuclear bomb? This is a good opportunity. With his strength and influence on Earth, he is enough to rule the Earth. He is just slowly nibbling away at us, and he has already devoured us. We can't just sit there and wait for death. His strength will increase with the sun. This may be our only chance. The longer the time, the less able we will be to resist him. I support the use of nuclear bombs. I support. America, please launch the nuclear bomb with the largest yield. We unanimously agree. Agree. Hasn't anyone ever thought about what to do if we can't kill him? There was a silence in the communication. Don't miss this opportunity. He will be even more powerful in the future. Launch the nuclear bomb. Launch. America, launch it. Maximum yield, we support it. Blow him up. America, don't miss this opportunity. Launch it now. Continuous approvals for the launch kept coming out, and Amanda Waller's face looked as if it was burnt. The United States alone was going to bear the wrath of Bamulodi. How could this be possible? She was silent for a while before she said, 15 countries launching nuclear bombs together. The channel was silent for a moment. Chapter 232, Fear of Insects. Hal. Hal groaned in pain. The yellow energy of fear completely entered his body, circulating through his blood, and constantly contaminated his cells. All cells seemed to be infiltrated and stained with yellow fear. Hal raised his head, his eyes were ferocious, and blue veins kept climbing on his body. The yellow light of fear shone like a dragon, infecting his body with bulging blue veins. But in an instant, the yellow energy of fear spread and climbed to his brain. In an instant, it seemed as if the fear of the entire earth was shrouding his body, and the fear of the entire earth was absorbed by him. His resolute will could not help but painfully perceive the fear that humans on this earth exude at every moment. No. Help. In a country where women are least safe, a woman is raped every 13 minutes. 6 women are gang raped every day, a bride is killed every 69 minutes due to dowry disputes, and 19 women are splashed with sulfuric acid every month. Hal heard the fear and pain of the weak women. At this moment, there were countless fears, which gathered and passed to Hal's body, and were absorbed by him. Don't kill me. The Middle East, which was in the midst of war, was almost shrouded in riots and counter-terrorism. The huge fear and fear energy overflowed, crossed the sky, and was absorbed by Hal. In a safe country, the fear of society, the fear of wives, husbands, fathers, bosses, criminals, and the country, the traces of fear in people's hearts, like pulling out threads, were invisibly drawn out, and gathered on Hal. All kinds of silences conveyed the voice of fear and fear to Hal's heart, begging him to save, begging for the sad world. At that moment, Hal felt the despair, gloom, and fear of the life on the entire earth. The upper echelons of the 15 national alliances were seeing the shock caused by the battle between Bamulodi and Diana, and the various decisions they made due to the power of fear. Hal felt them one by one. Almost, the fear gathered together almost destroyed Hal. Hal's eyes suddenly became abnormally large, and his pupils became abnormally round. His body began to twist. The yellow fear energy on his back combined with his flesh and blood, condensed into insect-like segmented limbs, pierced his skin and protruded. There were more than 10 pairs protruding from his back. Hal's eyes pierced with yellow fear light like lanterns, and 10 pairs of insect-like segmented limbs on his back, which were grey and yellow, were sharply inserted into the ground, supporting Hal's body, and holding it up high. Hal's face was expressionless, and the neural emotional system of his brain had been broken. What was left was his will supporting the consciousness eroded by fear, and controlling the fear. He looked up at the starry sky, his insect-like limbs propping him up high. He now looked like a mutant with long legs. Parallax monster was originally the embodiment of fear in the universe. It was an insect-like creature with multiple limbs and a multi-segmented body. It was infected by the fear energy of Parallax monster, and controlled by Hal's tyrannical will. It was not surprising that it was transformed into a form similar to Parallax monster. Puff Hal's mutated body rioted. The 10 pairs of insect-like limbs with a dull yellow hue behind him suddenly swam in the air like spiderwebs and flew up into space. Above the starry sky, 2 streams of light kept colliding, streaking across the bright meteor flashes, and flashing the magnificence of the night sky. Rather than saying it was a battle, it was better to say that Badi was chasing Diana to attack her and consume the divine power in her body. Once the divine power energy could not be maintained, it would be the time for Diana to fail. Diana was not feeling well. The man in front of her completely broke her proud princess heart. Before leaving Paradise Island, she was the most powerful warrior in Amazon, the Amazon princess. She thought she could use her own strength to seek justice for the 50 million dead humans and let the murderer be punished. However, reality taught her to be an Amazon. That is, she was beaten like a ball in space, and was beaten to fly around. Her strength was not as good as the man in front of her. Her fighting skills were not as good as this man. Her wisdom was not as good as this man. All her small tricks and battles were completely useless. Without a chance, Diana could only feel depressed in her heart. Her beautiful face was filled with anger. Another blow was hit far away. She forgot how many times she was hit. If there is no accident, this will be her fall and failure, death in the hands of this man. On the ground, all countries with reconnaissance satellites were watching Badi and Diana in the starry sky with all their heart and soul. This kind of power that can reach space is too suffocating for human beings. The superpowers of the 15 united countries quickly summoned all the important persons who were safe and not invaded by Badi to discuss whether they could use nuclear bombs. This matter is too important. Many presidents, kings, parliaments, and military commanders, no one can easily decide to use nuclear bombs, and at the same time they cannot bear the wrath of Bamulodi. Bamulodi's power is everywhere and has penetrated into every inch of their country. The large and medium-sized group companies in the country have obviously occupied most of their countries. Not to mention that almost every country has upper-level officials secretly controlled by Bamulodi, and even the president is directly his man. The best result is that Bamulodi will die and die in space. And if Bamulodi does not die, then mankind will have no hope. Just the current situation has gradually been eaten up by Bamulodi in many countries, and it is unknown how many countries are secretly controlled by him. They don't have many choices. It's just a moment. In the encrypted communication channel, the voice of seconding was heard. Launch. Our country agrees. The war has always been going on. This is our only chance. Agree. 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 America. 43 million tons of nuclear bombs. Lock the target range. Russia. 32 million tons of nuclear bombs. Lock the target range. Britain. 30 million tons of nuclear bombs. Lock the target range. Africa, the mercenary country. 24 million tons of nuclear bombs. Lock the target range. Germany. 17 million tons of nuclear bombs. Lock. Impala. 8 million tons of nuclear bombs. Lock. Kandak. 5 million tons of nuclear bombs. Lock. Eastern. 30 million tons of nuclear bombs. Lock. Chapter 233 Fireworks Feast. HMM. Diana's beautiful figure flew backwards and hit a weather satellite. The still bright and shiny satellite sank a lot and left the orbit directly, flying into the deep space. There is no air in the universe, so no sound can be transmitted, but the violent shock and impact gathered in Diana's body, making her waist seem to break. Her internal organs were shaken to vomit, her eyes widened, and a mouthful of scarlet blood mixed with a little golden halo was vomited by her poof, and she couldn't hold it anymore, vomiting in the universe, floating miserably. Diana had never met such a powerful enemy before, and was completely at a disadvantage, without a single chance of winning. Diana bit her teeth deep in blood, her brows knitted in pain, and her eyes were unwilling. This was her first appearance, the first time she appeared on Earth, and she wanted to do something for the human beings on Earth, but she was beaten like a god, and was beaten out of space without mercy. She was beaten in a series of fancy ways in space and flew everywhere, turning into a meteor. She obviously possessed the extremely sharp Vulcan sword that could split atoms, and was equipped with divine equipment, including the divine shield, the truth lasso, the guardian silver bracelet, the starlight crown, and the champion helmet. However, she was not able to plead for the people and bring the criminals to justice, and was even beaten up. She could feel that, as long as the Vulcan sword hit Bamulodi, it would definitely hurt him, but she didn't hit him at all. She swung hundreds of swords in vain, and was hit by nearly 100 punches. If it weren't for the abundant divine energy in her body that restricted Bamulodi from fighting with her carefully, she would have been crushed to death. Diana even felt a little aggrieved, the grievance of being beaten up by Bamulodi without any reason. This was not a fight, but a beating. But this slight grievance soon disappeared, because Badi was very fast, wearing a white windbreaker, with a straight nose, a wide forehead and an indifferent face, shining under the starry sky. His tall body rushed towards Diana from a distance again, and punched her again. But Diana raised the divine shield, that was emitting a faint yellow light, and her fist collided with the shield again. The golden divine light was like ripples on the water, and quickly dissipated. The extremely powerful force was directly transmitted to the shield and to Diana's palm. The power penetrated into her bones. She frowned in pain, puffed up her cheeks, and gritted her teeth to hold back the pain. The satellite behind her broke into two pieces, and the metal mechanical parts scattered in the space. Once again, she streaked across the space like a meteor. Quickly, while flying, she slightly adjusted her position, ready to withstand the next attack, waiting for an opportunity. However, this time, she was slightly stunned. The floating mechanical parts in the space set off a scene of transcendence and majesty. Badi's white figure was suspended in the space, but he did not chase, but narrowed his eyes and looked at the insect-like howl. Diana suddenly felt the cold insect limbs on her smooth back, which resisted the impact of her flying backwards. Moreover, the limbs also brought a sense of panic and fear, which was transmitted through her skin. This feeling made her eyes panic for a moment, and she recalled the fear in her heart when she was a child, facing a giant python that was bigger than her and wanted to swallow her in one bite. She was startled and quickly gathered her mind. She turned her head and looked, and her eyes were shocked. Hal's eyes were like lanterns, emitting a cloudy yellow light, revealing a terrifying look. His strong body was stained with yellow marks, as if he had experienced the ancient times, and was decayed by fear. Behind his body, 10 pairs of slender, dark yellow and cold insect limbs stretched out behind him. You. Diana stared, her heart trembled, and she couldn't help but open her red lips. Hal's image. In any case, this image is much more evil than the evil tyrant Bamulodi. I don't have much time. I will help you control him. There are more than 15 super nuclear bombs being launched in this direction. This is the last resort of the Earth. We have to control him to explode at the center point and blow him to death. Hal said expressionlessly. In space, there is no air transmission and no sound. But Diana understood Hal's meaning by reading Hal's lip language. She looked at Hal deeply, raised the divine shield on her left hand, and a faint golden energy was transmitted from her arm into it, covering the shield again, responding with action. Okay. Her face was firm, and her eyes were firm. Without a trace of hesitation, she put the sword of the god of fire back into her waist, and the lasso of truth appeared on her right hand. The lasso of truth was able to control Badi for a short time. The two of them communicated quickly and not secretly. Badi, who had been paying attention to this insect-fearing monster, saw their conversation. Badi raised his eyebrows slightly, tilted his head, and his eyes penetrated the atmosphere. The number of nuclear bombs on the Earth is undoubtedly more than any other period. Even Hera does not completely control the nuclear bombs of the entire Earth, because his own existence makes each country too insecure. There are always many hidden and offline methods that make Hera unable to control. On the Earth. In Oregon, the United States, at the destroyer base, a rocket over 40 meters long, carrying a 43 million kiloton nuclear warhead, belched out huge flames and rose into the sky, shooting towards Badi. In Yaroslavl, Russia, at the Red Star base, a 32 million kiloton nuclear rocket was launched into the sky, emitting flames. In Kimbreth, the United Kingdom, a 30 million kiloton nuclear bomb was launched into the sky, flying towards the target location and into space. In the east, at the HBCZ Zizhou grassland in QH province, the first nuclear bomb base in the east slowly launched a 30 million kiloton nuclear bomb into the sky. In Africa, the mercenary country created by the Death Bell launched a 24 million kiloton nuclear bomb into space. Germany, Impala, Kandak, and the 15 most powerful countries on Earth, united together, launch nuclear bombs one by one. All over the Earth, anywhere, you can see the rocket flames slowly rising into the sky, flying towards space, converging on the same target. This night, the fire of rockets lit up the air of tension. People in the city looked up and saw only this kind of clouds, soaring into the sky, crossing the continents of the Earth and gathering together, even to release the most brilliant fireworks. Chapter 234, Batisphere. Space, pitch black. The broken satellite machinery is like a long stream of garbage, surrounding this space. Suddenly, from Diana's hand, a truth lasso transformed into a huge and endless whip net, like thousands of golden snakes entangled together. Suddenly, it saw the target of Badi, raised its head, stared at Badi's figure, and suddenly broke out in a riot. The golden truth lassos that transformed into thousands of arrows shot out, shooting out a golden rain of arrows, penetrating, knocking away, and crushing the mechanical debris along the way, shooting towards Badi. Badi's eyes glared, and the heat vision rushed up, tearing a burning red heat vision in the dark space, shooting towards the truth lasso in front of him like a rain of arrows. The heat vision shockwave swept across the space, colliding with the transformed golden truth lasso, and the waves exploded continuously. There was no sound transmitted, but the fierce continuous explosion light and shadow were like seeing a spaceship far away, sweeping under the super beam laser, exploding a light and shadow. This scene was magnificent and grand. The continuous explosion light effects looked like flashing meteors on Earth. In the energy collision explosion, all the space debris and satellite mechanical parts around were shaken apart. In the explosion, the real truth lasso, with golden divine power, rushed out from the explosion. The tip of the tiny lasso was fearless, and the spikes stretched the lasso straight, shooting to several meters in front of Badi. Badi narrowed his eyes slightly, and the burning red hot eyes disappeared between his eyes. At the same time, from his cold lips, a cold white current came out of his mouth. like a surging river, meeting the tip of the truth lasso. In the cold white frozen breath torrent, the front end of the truth lasso was like a fish swimming upstream, struggling and twisting like a snake, gathering more powerful golden divine energy, and suddenly struggling hard to cut the cold current. However, when it reached half a meter in front of Badi's chest, the truth lasso was already covered by a thick layer of ice, and the golden divine energy was completely offset by the cold current. The truth lasso was like a frozen snake, and the cold air spread towards the end. Diana's hand holding the lasso spread upward. Damn it. Diana frowned, shook the truth lasso in her hand, and the lasso rolled in waves. The golden divine energy spread, shaking off the thick ice in space. The lasso was recharged with energy again, and it was flexible as she wished. The same move obviously could not restrict Badi's actions. But this time, she was not fighting alone. At the same time, the 10 insect-like limbs behind Hana, with a yellow and cold shell, were waving in space, quickly extending and growing, spanning thousands of meters. When they arrived in front of Badi, they were already half the thickness of a person, with the tip emitting a cold and sharp chill, stabbing at Badi from all directions. Badi never ignored any information on the battlefield. When the 10 insect-like arthropods attacked him, Badi flew sideways and easily escaped from the encirclement. He used his hand as a knife to chop at the arthropod. Badi used more than 70% of his strength, gathering the muscles and energy of his body, to find out how powerful this thing was. However, he was stunned for a moment after the chop. The arthropod was cut off without any obstacles. The cut surface was flat and smooth, and yellow-gray pus flowed out. It seemed that blood was floating in the space. At the same time, an inexplicable fear rippled Badi's heart, making Badi pause for a moment. The moment he touched the arthropod, it seemed to have aroused Badi's fear. In an instant, Badi's pupils became confused, and memories appeared in his mind. He seemed to have returned to his previous life, where he was doing nothing, without any goals, without any ideals, without any wishes. He could only work from 9 to 5 in the whole society, feeling infinitely tired, and drifting aimlessly with the flow of the world. That kind of confusion is the normal state of a person who is rolling in society, the normal state of ordinary people. There is nothing I want to do, I just want to live like this, without fluctuations. What a terrible future this is. Ordinary is really terrible. It is really terrible to be a busy office worker. It is really terrible to be a busy ordinary person. It is really terrible to contribute my insignificant energy to this society. It is really terrible to live a busy life without meaning, to live without finding meaning. It is terrible. Living in a humble way is too tiring and terrible. Flattering others and living for money is really terrible. Among these 1 in 7 billion people, I'm so huge and tiny, living such an ordinary and boring life. It is really sad and terrible. Human beings are really too wronged. Living without passion and vitality, living simply, what's the point? This kind of future without a future without a trace of waves, gradually wears away people's passion and dreams. This is not the future he wants. This kind of future is not the future he wants. So even if he meets his wife and kills them, he will not abandon the pain of killing the woman he loves, the painful memories, no matter what, because it is she who can stir up waves in his heart. When there are waves in the heart, there is passion. Until he came to this world, he was able to laugh wildly and change this boring, ordinary, dreamless, and passionless world. He was afraid of being ordinary. So, I'm here to change this world. Badi's eyes suddenly cleared up, and in an instant, he saw Hal's limbs surrounding him, and Hal's whole body pulled in front of him, trying to control and tie him up. Badi's windbreaker hem moved without wind. His chest was raised and strong. His body stood tall in the void, exuding an invisible and huge momentum, as fascinating as a black hole. His eyes instantly recovered from the confusion, and a fiery emotion quickly rose in his heart. His blood was scorching and rushing through his body like a raging river. A smile appeared on his face, an exaggerated smile, exaggerated and fiery. Thank you. It reminded me of my fear. Badi suddenly laughed in the space. His eyes were fiery and crazy, thanking Hal, and his figure burst out with unprecedented speed, punching Hal who was coming. My conquest is too plain, too ordinary. I'll let you drag it for too long. Badi grinned, feeling the pleasure of this punch, and directly punched Hal with a huge hole in his chest. His eyes lost their spirit and floated into the space. Suddenly, Diana was already behind Badi, and her arms emitted golden divine power. In an instant, she hugged Badi from behind, tightly holding him, and took him to fly towards the nuclear bomb. Bamulodi, your doomsday has come. Diana gritted her teeth and watched in pain as Hal's body flew away into space without weight. She hugged Badi tightly and flew madly towards the nuclear bomb. Unexpectedly, Badi stretched out his arms and strangled Diana's neck. This posture made Diana confused. She hugged Badi's waist, and Badi's arms were strangling her neck. The two rushed towards the nuclear bomb in this weird posture. Come on. From today on, it is the day of nuclear peace. Chapter 235 The man who walked out of the nuclear explosion. The United States, the White House. The Oval Office is spacious, bright, and elegant. The people here can be regarded as the least likely people in the United States to be bought and controlled by Bamulodi, and the people who have been persistently against Bamulodi. The current president of the United States. 3 army generals, one of whom is Sam Ryan. 10 years ago, the second year after General Wake's death, he led the good style and cleaned up General Wake's mess, and was naturally promoted to the youngest army general in American history. Amanda Waller of the Sky Eye. 2 Navy admirals, 3 Air Force generals, and several members of the Congress. These are the least likely people in the United States to be controlled and bought by Bamulodi. It is conceivable that after 10 years, Bamulodi's infiltration and control of the United States has reached an astonishing level. If everyone here is controlled by Bamulodi, then there is really no hope for the United States. The president thought deeply in his heart, his face tense, and he glanced at all the important people here. His eyes were forced to calm down. He held his breath and stared at the scene monitored by the satellite on the screen. At this moment, the atmosphere in the office was inexplicably tense, which made people nervous. The air seemed to be hot, steaming everyone's heart. The president's skin felt a little wet. In this autumn, he was so nervous that he was sweating, and his mouth was dry. He couldn't help but pull his tie with his hand and take a breath. The loose bow tie seemed to suffocate his breathing. Have other countries launched? He asked nervously, and his breathing was inevitably heavy for a moment. It has been launched. Amanda Waller answered quickly with a solemn expression. The president's eyes flashed with a hint of sternness, and with heavy worry, he said, "Can we blow him up? This is already the most powerful weapon on Earth, enough to destroy the Earth. If this doesn't kill him, then that kind of result is simply unimaginable. The United States, which was the first to touch the tiger's whiskers, will be directly destroyed by Bamulodi." This made everyone present gasp. Sam Ryan's face was heavy, and he slowly said, "We can only surrender." The word surrender was as heavy as a mountain, suppressing this office. The United States, the hegemon on Earth, and also the country most deeply invaded by Badi, was simply reduced to Badi's backyard, which was ridiculous to the extreme. The president and the admirals and congressmen around him felt a little more heavy in their hearts. Silence. Silence was suppressed in the air molecules. With a depressed, dull, and tight heart, everyone looked at the big screen with nervous eyes, and waited for the news after the nuclear bomb exploded. It was not only the United States that was so nervous. Russia, Britain, Germany, the East, Africa, Impala, Kandak, etc. Dozens of the most prosperous countries are not to be outdone, or waiting for the most powerful weapon on Earth to destroy the rule of the Kryptonians. At this time, in space, Badi had a smile on his lips, and his right arm was holding Diana, whose face was red and her eyes were angry. She had never been held like this in her life, like a puppy, making her furious. Similarly, Diana was not to be outdone, and her arms emerged with the most powerful divine energy, dyeing both arms golden. She hugged Badi's waist, hugged him with all her strength, and flew towards the nuclear bomb madly. Diana's waist brought Badi a few traces of pain. Even if he consumed a lot of Diana's divine energy, he still couldn't avoid her last fight. The divine energy she emitted pressed deeply on his waist, shrinking his strong waist. Badi did not resist. With a smile on his face and a hint of heat in his eyes, he allowed Diana to push him towards the nuclear bomb, and he also controlled himself to fly towards the nuclear bomb. The nuclear bomb spurted out strong flames and hit Badi's chest. At this moment, the group of people at the top of the earth, the President of the United States, stared, suffocated, and clenched his hands tightly, and couldn't help shaking. Must die. Bamulodi. The highest people in Russia, Germany, Britain, and the East, all couldn't help but clench their fists tightly, hold their breath, stare at this moment, and hope for one thing in their hearts that they had never hoped for before. That is, the death of a life. The nuclear bomb exploded in Bati's chest. Bati smiled slightly, with a smile in his eyes. He let go of Diana, opened his hands, and indulged in a smile of enjoyment, as if he was enjoying the comfort of a hot spring. The strong and hot light exploded in an instant, and the huge impact force completely hit Bati's body. In an instant, the memory particle clothes on Bati's body were shaken by the impact force like flying ash, and the magnetic field was chaotic, and could not be connected. Like a puff of ash, it quickly dissipated from his chest. The scorching flames, the flames instantly burned, burning Bati's skin, quickly, instantly, like burning a layer of paper, burning. Then he saw the deep red muscle fibers inside. The flames penetrated deeply, destroying and burning nearly 2 centimeters of muscle surface, which gave Bati an extremely strong burning sensation. His face became a terrifying face of muscle fibers without skin, like a medical model of a naked muscle. Heh. Bati's muscular face outlined a smile and smiled. At the same time, the energy contained in Bati's body surged out faster than the exploding flames, competing with the instantaneous flames, and constantly repairing the muscles again. Every cell, in this intense and scorching temperature, operates an unparalleled human magnetic field to protect itself, and the surging energy begins to repair. The repair speed was even more intense than the temperature at that moment. Muscles were constructed in an instant. The connection between each cell was infinitely divided again to form the epidermis. In an instant, his skin, starting from his chest, spread out white skin, re-showing this majestic strong body that stepped on the planet and destroyed the earth. In the end, this nuclear bomb was not even as fast as Bati's body repair and failed to burn Bati's body. Diana, who was holding Bati, had her hands faded in an instant. She was knocked unconscious before she could hold on for a moment. Her hands loosened and were shaken away. She was blown away by the shockwave. The armor on her body emitted a faint light, protecting her. On the streets of the earth, at night, in an instant, a scorching sun appeared above people's heads, and the light pierced the night. Even the people on the ground felt a slight amplitude and panic. What is that? Some people stared at the nuclear bomb explosion. After such a long distance, plus the barrier of the Earth's atmosphere, watching the nuclear bomb explosion in space was like a sun. An exploding flaming sun rose in the dark night. What is this? A sun in the night sky? No. That's an explosion. Something exploded outside the Earth. Which country conducted a missile explosion test? This is too horrifying. Ordinary people raised their heads and talked in horror. Many people raised their cameras to record this moment. However, this was not a fleeting scene. After the first nuclear bomb exploded, more than a dozen rockets carrying nuclear warheads rushed straight into the big fireball of dark and dense flames. Then another explosion occurred inside. The fireball swelled more and more, and the flames kept rolling and roaring inside, as if a giant beast was struggling and roaring, wanting to kill everything and destroy everything. The roar and roar rolled out surging flames, and more than a dozen nuclear bombs kept being inserted and detonated. The rolling fireball expanded to cover the sky. The intense fireball expanded more and more. In a crazy moment, it was expanded by more than a dozen nuclear bombs, and became extremely huge. The entire dark sky seemed to be pressed down by this huge fireball. It illuminated the night like day, and frightened ordinary people on the ground. They felt as if there was a heat wave blowing on the hair on their faces, and they were afraid that this fireball would really press down on the earth. After all the nuclear bombs exploded, the huge black fireball gradually dissipated. In the hazy darkness, a tall and majestic body emerged from the nuclear explosion. He emerged from the dark radiation of space pollution, and his face was illuminated by the firelight, and he smiled faintly. Chapter 236 Death Knell's Desperate Gamble. It's over. The US president's eyes were dull, his expression was sluggish, and his body was like mud. In an instant, all the strength in his body was drained away. He sat on the chair without the manners of a president of a country, and he couldn't even lift a finger. He stared blankly at the image, transmitted by the satellite administration. In the dark space, a clear figure appeared in the flames and fireballs, which made his original expectations vanish. The Oval Office was dead silent. The air was filled with suffocating solidification. Several military generals were pale, and the top members of the party screamed in panic. How is it possible? This is a nuclear bomb. How can a living creature withstand it? He withstood it, and he was unharmed. No damage. An elderly Air Force general trembled in his voice, and his whole body trembled with his breath, and his breathing was rapid and heavy. It was really unbelievable that there would be a living creature that could withstand a nuclear bomb with its flesh. This refreshed their concept of living things. Biological organisms are even more powerful than nuclear bombs. At the same time, this means that any kind of weapon on Earth will have no effect on Bamulodi. He can dominate the entire Earth, as if he were in a deserted place. Just thinking about this, the admirals and congressmen present were so silent that they were panicked. A heavy and oppressive atmosphere rose in the office, like a mountain, pressing heavily on their hearts. The ineffectiveness of nuclear bombs crushed their last hope. What should we do about the United States? The President of the United States had confused eyes, and his body was like mud when he sat on the chair. He muttered to himself with a wooden expression. Once he thought about the fact that the presidency he had fought so hard for would be recorded in history in the future as the last president of the United States, a president denounced by the people as incompetent, the last president who ruined everything in the United States, and a person of great evil. Thinking of all this, his heart was completely broken. Subconsciously, his face turned pale, and his hands trembled as he pulled open the drawer. Inside was a specially customized Glock pistol, made of plastic, with a beautiful texture like white jade, and some of the corners were smoothed by the warmth. This was his favorite, and he often played with it. In the past, he liked to take out this gun and play with it when he was thinking alone at night, feeling the perfect thickness and the cold gun body, which was gradually warmed by the warmth of his hands. Now, he trembled and picked up the Glock pistol, put it against his chin, and put his finger on the trigger. All of this came from his own fear, panic, escape, and unwillingness to face it. Sam Ryan's expression was solemn and silent. He saw the president's actions with his eyes, and there was no movement. Even several generals were shocked by the appearance of Badi after the nuclear bomb explosion. They saw the president raise the pistol to his chin. They were not surprised at all, but took it for granted. Such escape and death were more realistic, avoiding more tragic experiences in the future. They would be condemned by the whole United States and the world for who knows how long. They would be infamous in the future, the last heinous person in history, and the last president who caused the United States to lose. Just as the whole audience was silent, waiting for the president to commit suicide, Amanda Waller's face changed. She took a step forward, came to the president's side, and quickly reached under the president's chin and shot the Glock pistol sideways. Bang! The Glock pistol made a slight gunshot, so slight that it could not even be heard from 2 rooms away. A wisp of smoke floated out of the muzzle, and the bullet shot straight to the ceiling, smashing one of the bright bulbs on the crystal chandelier, and the fragments fell from the air to the smooth ground. The chandelier shook in fear. "Mr. President, we are still not in a desperate situation," Amanda Waller said. Amanda's words brought the president back from his trance. His body trembled, and he threw the Glock pistol directly. The white back of his hand turned red, and a slight pain brought him back to his senses. Just now, in a trance, he wanted to commit suicide. He felt a chill in his heart, goosebumps suddenly appeared on his body, sweat came out of his body, and he was awakened. He was almost forced to commit suicide by the huge pressure. Is there any other way to stop it? The president was relieved after the panic, picked up a handkerchief on the table, wiped the sweat on his face, and asked hurriedly. His eyes kept wandering among the many admirals, and the many admirals looked at each other and shook their heads silently. The president's heart sank, and he still hadn't solved the problem. Amanda Waller said calmly, "I contacted the superpowers of the National Alliance, who know the death knell of Bamulodi best, and proposed a desperate method." The president said quickly, "No matter how desperate it is, we must implement it." In the current situation, no matter what kind of sacrifice, the entire United States is willing to try, and the president is 100% supportive. As long as the United States can be saved, anything is fine. Sam Ryan's face was solemn and silent, and a trace of strange color flashed in his eyes. Amanda Waller took a laptop from the side, opened it, and connected to the encrypted communication conference. There were more than 20 superpowers from powerful countries on the earth. The decision makers of the country had all joined in the past few days, after seeing the danger of their own countries, and planned to overthrow Bamulodi's future rule. Those with foresight have found that Bamulodi's rule is difficult to shake, and Bamulodi's ambition is also obvious. This makes them feel cold in their hearts, and they can't wait to overthrow this future ruler, to avoid the start of war. Will this not be detected by Bamulodi's artificial intelligence? The president was a little puzzled. They knew that Badi used Hera to monitor almost the entire world. On the Earth, more than 70% of the satellites are Badi's eyes in the sky, monitoring the entire Earth. No, Bamulodi's artificial intelligence is not omnipotent. Our communication, after data disguise, will only be a piece of noise from the monitoring of artificial intelligence. The sound of the death knell came from the laptop. What can you do to deal with Bamulodi? The president asked again. I have been studying Bamulodi for 10 years. Ever since he landed on Earth, I have been studying how to kill him. As expected, in the end, he is not only my enemy, but also the enemy of the entire world. The spectral radiation of the red sun can prevent him from absorbing sunlight to increase his strength, but it is useless to him now. There is enough solar energy in his imperial building to provide him with enhancement. In addition, kryptonite is his nemesis. It can weaken him to the level of an ordinary person. Let us kill him. But all the kryptonite on Earth has been plundered by him. I need manpower. I need help from all the superpowered people on Earth. Bamulodi captured Princess Diana of the Amazon and killed the King of Atlantis, which will inevitably cause a counterattack from these two ancient forces. His millions of troops will be fully mobilized to wipe out these two forces. The base will rarely have a period of emptiness while he is dealing with these two ancient forces. I need all the superpowered people on the entire Earth to listen to my orders. Invade the Imperial building, obtain the kryptonite that can restrain him, and kill him. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 237, Future Hal, the Parallax Demon. In space, Badi glanced at the Earth indifferently and passed by several countries that launched nuclear bombs and sentenced them to death in his heart. With a thought, another memory particle clothing windbreaker covered his body. This is a stand-up collar windbreaker with a gold-plated chain as a button on the chest, showing a mysterious, noble, and elegant temperament. The strong body fits the clothes tightly, showing a mysterious and polite temperament. This is Raven's masterpiece. In his body, there is a storage space created by Raven and him. Unless he is smashed to pieces, the space in the cells will not disappear. It is stuffed with hundreds of clothes and windbreakers of different styles modified by Raven and Pamela to avoid the embarrassment of being naked after each battle. Badi turned his head and swept his eyes into the black circle of radiation. His eyes penetrated through layers of radiation and saw Diana. She was unconscious. Her armor was damaged, revealing her infinitely beautiful skin, her extremely beautiful face, with a trace of worry between her eyebrows, which made people feel heartbroken. Her curly black hair spread out, floating horizontally in the space, like a Valkyrie who had experienced a great war in the ancient times, sleeping in the space with vicissitudes and damage all over her body. Badi moved his body, and the magnetic field of his body wrapped around his body surface, passing through the center of the radiation circle with black smoke, and flew to the other corner, next to Diana. Then, he grabbed Diana's neck with his palm like a chicken. Her skin was delicate and smooth, and her fingers felt like silk, and he dragged her away in the space. There was no pity for this beautiful Princess Diana. After successively recovering the blown away divine shield, the lasso of truth, and the sword of the god of fire. Badi looked into the distance in the space, his farsightedness turned on, and scanned the universe. His brows were slightly wrinkled. Hal Jordan did not explode at the center of the nuclear bomb. On the contrary, he was still far away from the bomb. Badi felt that his physical strength would at least not be blown to pieces by radiation or the aftermath of the nuclear explosion. Badi wanted to study Hal's insect body, which could absorb the fear of the Earth, and go to space in an instant to fight with him, even though he was defeated by one punch. If Hal could hide for a period of time, and absorb the fear of life on Earth every day, he might be able to kill Badi. But at that time, Hal would inevitably lose control of his fear, and become a monster. That's why he was able to go to space to fight Badi in an instant, when he was under his control. Suddenly, Badi's eyes lit up. Hal's body was 3 million kilometers away from him in space. This distance was quite far. The average diameter of the Earth is 12,742 kilometers. The distance between Hal and Badi is almost 3 million Earths away. To be honest, it is completely unreasonable for Hal to be blown so far by a nuclear bomb. Badi feels a little strange. Moreover, Hal's body is gradually flying towards the depths of space. Found you. Badi raised his eyebrows and took action without hesitation, penetrating the radiation layer of the nuclear bomb and flying towards Hal. Diana, who was in his hand, was like a pendant on the plane. Under Badi's high-speed flight, her limbs swung around unconsciously, like a string doll, without any manners. However, at this time, Badi was suddenly stunned and stopped. Hal's body seemed to sense Badi's approach and accelerated madly. The 10 insect limbs behind him were like light spiders crawling on the water. They swam in space at an extremely fast and coordinated speed, smashing all the fragmented meteorites in the universe, and flying towards the depths of the universe. It seemed that there was an inexplicable attraction in the depths of the universe, pulling Hal, the magnet, to the depths of the universe. Badi calculated in his mind that with his speed and the speed at which Hal was moving away, it would take at least 13 years to catch up with Hal and get his body. As Hal's speed increased, the time might be even longer, and it might even take 100 years to catch Hal's body. In 100 years, the Earth would have long been in an unknown state. With this in mind, Badi gave up chasing him. He wanted to catch Hal, just to study Hal's changes and gain some insight into the green light, the yellow fear energy, the parallax monster, and the special will technology. This kind of willpower technology is extremely magical, not to mention the other kinds of light rings, color lights, and black and white light rings. The most powerful one should be the miracle wishing machine in the willpower technology. In the universe, any wish can be realized, time can be reversed, the dead can be resurrected, the universe can be controlled, and so on. Any wish can be realized. Even if Badi didn't even think about this kind of willpower technology, he couldn't figure out a clue. How is it realized? Parallax monster? Badi frowned and saw Hal's body speeding away from his sight in the universe. He couldn't help but have a premonition that Hal had been dominated by fear and kept walking towards the body of the parallax monster. I'm afraid that the next time I see Hal will have merged with the parallax monster and become a parallax demon. The parallax monster can force the host to succumb to the emotion it represents, fear. People who are possessed by it are called parallax demons. The Green Lantern Beast Iron Shark will support the host Iron Man and become the host's helper, while the Yellow Lantern Beast Parallax Monster will dominate the host, seize the control of the host's body, and merge with the host to become the Parallax Demon. The Parallax Monster is a cosmic monster in itself, sealed by the cosmic guardian of the OA star, and has the power to create chaos and war, to generate a large amount of fear. Because the parallax monster is a body of fear will energy, it cannot interfere with real matter, and has a strong will, so that the Green Lantern ring directly chooses Badi, who is not afraid of fear. Due to the special nature of Badi's soul, the parallax monster cannot defeat Badi from the fear level. The parallax monster that dominates Hal's body is the parallax demon, and will have a more powerful attack on the material level, not limited to the spread of the fear will. The parallax demon is a cosmic monster with the will of fear and the attack on the material level. The current Badi is not even enough to compete with the parallax demon. Parallax demon. Badi pondered, thought about it for a while, and roughly understood the cause and effect. The death of a Bunser, his fall on Earth, and the appearance of the Green Lantern ring on Earth all indicate that the Parallax monster has broken free from its seal and is wreaking havoc on the universe. As the center of the universe, the Earth, in this position, absorbs the energy of fear from the entire universe faster than anywhere else. Badi glanced at the Green Lantern ring on his right finger and rubbed his thumb against the cold and light texture that was like a combination of plastic and steel. Perhaps, next time, he will take the oath, become a Green Lantern, and deal with the Parallax monster. Finally, Badi looked into the distance at Hal Jordan, who was going away in the deep space, and a sharp cold light flashed in his eyes. He turned around and returned to Earth. Chapter 238 War Preparation, Unification. At night, the fireworks feast caused by the nuclear bomb explosion is causing unrest. Badi carried Diana and flew back from space through the atmosphere. At night, the glass on the exterior wall of the Emperor building was like fish scales that could breathe. It unfolded and refracted the bright moonlight, presenting a faint luster at night. The light was overflowing and shining in the sky, magnificent and extraordinary. On the rooftop, Badi opened the composite light-absorbing glass directly, like a meteor passing by, rubbing against the intense temperature, and directly inserted into the top floor. Badi's figure suddenly stopped and floated in the house. The friction temperature on his body quickly dissipated. His black hair was flying, and the hem of his windbreaker was waving wildly. There was a wave of air spreading around him and gradually stopped. He touched the ground with his feet, and glanced at this top floor residence. Seeing that Raven and Pamela were not in the room, he left directly. Diana was stripped clean and handed over to a research-type Hera, imprisoned, and a file was established to study the divine energy and structure in her body. Then, Badi went down to the 390th floor, his office. He summoned the highest commander of the Krypton Corps, Hot. When Badi got the Krypton spaceship, there were two babies, a boy and a girl, half-made. Hot was one of them. Badi had recorded advanced genes that were not inferior to Zod. He was the commander of the Krypton warriors on the entire Earth and the individual with the highest potential among all the Krypton gene warriors that had been catalyzed in the past 10 years. The other female baby was injected with information by the artificial intelligence Hera and had a body. Your Majesty, they are unforgivable. Hot's face was solemn and tall. He knelt on one knee on the soft carpet with a hint of anger. He was set by Badi to be extremely loyal and could not tolerate anyone provoking his majesty. It was a sin to taint his majesty's body with a nuclear bomb. They deserved to die. Hot's square face was faintly bursting with anger. His fists were pressed against the carpet. He knelt on one knee on the ground and looked at Badi. The anger in his heart was so unforgivable that he wanted to burn them to death bit by bit with his thermal vision. Yes, the war has begun. Badi said with a faint smile. Ultra, you select 50,000 Kryptonian warriors, open the aircraft carrier authority, and go to Atlantis. I want you to capture all Atlanteans. Ultra's body shook, his eyes suddenly excited, and he answered loudly, yes, your majesty. In his physique, he has an aggressive gene, and he has an unusually strong love of plunder for invasion and conquest. Go, I will ask the Magic Academy to allocate 30,000 sets of anti-magic armor for you. Badi said. Your majesty will not be disappointed. Ultra beat his chest with his right hand, made a Kryptonian military order, and said with a serious face. Then he strode away and began to count the soldiers, receive the mothership, and prepare to go to Atlantis. After Ultra left, a 10-year-old girl with a delicate figure, wearing a sheet nightgown and sleepy eyes, pushed open the door of Badi's office, walked straight in, and leaned on the sofa with her head tilted lazily. This is Hera. Unlike Ultra's direct catalytic growth, Hera chose natural growth, experiencing the birth of a life, the growth experience from childhood to adulthood, and the growth of a person. Old Bay, what are you doing? The teacher said we should go to bed early, and the class has to go to Metropolitan Park tomorrow. Little Hera squinted her eyes, leaned her head on the sofa with a sleepy look, kicked her legs, and her white calves kicked up her nightgown. She lay on the sofa sideways, yawned, and said lazily, Little Hera, who is at the age of 10, is going to school. Badi was amused and confused. This experience of life is really thorough. You gather 200,000 Kryptonian warriors and superpowered gene warriors. I will order the ravens to support you and surround Paradise Island. See how they react before making a decision. Badi walked closer to little Hera, gathered her sheep nightgown with her legs spread apart, and smoothed it out. It was neat, cute, and beautiful. Badi nodded with satisfaction. Little Hera suddenly jumped up and became energetic. The skirt that Badi had just straightened was wrinkled again. She was young and tender, with a little baby fat on her face, and said maturely, "How to deal with the Olympian gods behind Paradise Island? It doesn't matter. I have tested Diana's strength. She can unify the earth." Badi sat down next to little Hera, pressed her head down to his thigh, let her lie on the sofa, straightened her skirt again, and then used his hands to gently and carefully combed little Hera's messy hair, and used his fingers to smooth it out. Diana can be used as a strength benchmark to measure the power of the gods of Olympus. There are even some gods who are weaker than Diana. Even if they are strong, they will not be much stronger than themselves. What's more, Badi also has the Green Lantern ring. Badi, wearing the ring, combined with the power of Krypton's physique, will not have any weaknesses. Well, I will try my best to persuade them to surrender. After all, these Amazon women are also rare resources. In the future, they will be a good force to conquer the universe. Little Hera leaned on Badi's thigh, nodded her little head, and said maturely, "In addition, we can directly kill the top leaders of the dozen or so countries that launch nuclear bombs, and order our people to control their countries. Don't be afraid of causing unrest." Badi said lightly, his fingers kept combing little Hera's hair gently. "War always requires the sacrifice of some people." Little Hera nodded and responded with a HMM. This kind of thing could have been done a long time ago, but in order to make a smooth transition, more undercover agents were added among them to avoid the unrest caused by the control of a certain country. Now is not too late, nor too early. It is suitable for unifying the world. After Badi faced Diana's combat power, he had no worries. Little Hera lay on Badi's thigh, and soon, she snored slightly. Her brain information is linked to the entire artificial intelligence Hera system, processing billions of calculations every moment. As a living being, she will be easily tired. When Badi gave the order, she had already connected to the central system, and began to deploy personnel to carry out Badi's order. Badi's eyes flashed with tenderness, and he gently stroked little Hera's hair. After a while, Badi carried little Hera to the top floor residence, covered little Hera with a quilt, and then left. Then, Badi went to Pamela's plant kingdom on the 392nd floor, and took her to Raven's magic school. It was called the magic school, but it was actually just a mixture of various magic weapons and technologies of a galaxy to provide to Badi. In the past 10 years, Raven has become a logistics supply personnel, and has made a lot of equipment that allows Krypton's physique to defend against magic. It is just in time to activate it now, calling a large number of defensive magic armors to prepare for battle. Tell them to prepare for war, and be affectionate with the two for a while. Badi went straight to the -14th floor, and extracted Jenny's bionic body. It was already 95% of what Badi saw at the beginning, enough to replace and save Jenny. Badi froze Jenny's bionic body, and placed it in his own space. With everything ready, Badi came in front of the Flash. Chapter 239 The Biggest Enemy. Emperor Building. -9 floors. The steel is cold, mixed with a little smell of machine oil after being refreshed. The Flash is not in a good situation. He is suspended in the air in a big letter shape, with thick pipes connecting his hands and legs. His legs are mechanical prostheses, brand new. The smooth steel surface is glowing with cold gelatin. There are dozens of transparent pipes the size of arteries, penetrating the arteries in various parts of his body, connecting to the heart and blood vessels, anesthetizing and constantly drawing blood to monitor his body. Zizzy. Yellow arcs are drawn from his body, hitting the dust around his skin, making a crackling sound. In the pipes on his body, a yellowish energy mixed with his blood is absorbed and transported to various places for research. Speed Force. He is restricted, controlling the frequency and absorption of speed force, collecting speed force through the pipes for measurement and research. Your Majesty, the recovery capacity of his body cells is dozens of times that of ordinary people. In the cell nucleus, a strange energy is circulated and emitted. This energy is extremely fast. It appears and disappears in 1,000th of a second, making it difficult to capture and use. We can only draw his blood each time and add the circulated energy to study the speed force. Due to time constraints, our research is still in the exploratory stage. But there is an extremely strange discovery. His source of energy is unknown, but as long as his body maintains nutrition, he can operate this strange speed force. Huan Ranzi, Your Majesty, as long as he keeps full and nutritious, the energy consumed and obtained is simply not proportional. He is a human-shaped perpetual motion machine. Ferdinand Swan, a gray-haired old man, looked at the Flash with sparkling eyes, emitting bright light. His face flushed, and reported excitedly. Even though he had witnessed many advanced technologies in the underground research institute of the Emperor building, technologies that were enough to win any Nobel Prize in the world, he was still extremely shocked by this individual life with such a strange energy reaction. This energy called Speed Force, the power possessed by the Flash, was too shocking for him. For the subject he was studying, the flesh and blood mechanical life power furnace, it was simply an existence that shocked the universe. He could even imagine that once the flesh and blood mechanical technology mixed with this energy was made into a flesh and blood technology spaceship, it would be able to travel in the universe at superluminal speeds without stopping to generate speed force. Even without the opening of a wormhole, relying solely on this superluminal speed, it would be enough to travel the entire solar system. Not to mention that, in theory, superluminal speed is a point that can travel through time. At that time, he could even test the past of traveling through time, which would be really shocking and sluggish, and a super event that would change the whole world. Although there were various difficulties in using it, he believed that, as long as time passed, he would definitely be able to study and use the existence of this speed force. By then, superluminal travel and traveling through time would be possible. Badi held the report researched by Ferdinand Swan in his hand, sliding and swiping on the tablet. His face was indifferent, and his eyes reflected the light of the data on the tablet. He flipped through dozens of pages and read them. Badi nodded and looked at the old man Ferdinand Swan. Badi had only brought him under his command because of the surname Swan and the fact that the old man had a certain authority in scientific research in the world. Unexpectedly, this old man was unexpectedly knowledgeable. In a short period of time, he proposed a theory based on the speed of the Flash and deduced a certain application efficiency of the speed force. The Earth scientists in this world are really imaginative. Well done. Keep him well nourished and wake him up first. I have something to talk to him about. Badi handed over the tablet and said. Old Ferdinand Swan's face froze, and he hesitated for a moment. He took the tablet from Badi and said hesitantly, Your Majesty, once he recovers his strength and uses all his strength to absorb the speed force that comes from nowhere, he may break free. All along, he has been keeping the Flash in a daze, slightly extracting the speed force and the Flash's blood. Even if there is a cooling device nearby that can cool down the cells and the speed force, Ferdinand Swan dare not let the Flash wake up completely, because in his detection theory, this speed force energy, the ultimate terrifying effect, will definitely not be limited by the cooling device. At least in his theoretical speculation, it is difficult to control. Badi's face was indifferent, and he glanced at him coldly. Old Ferdinand Swan dared not remind him again, lowered his head, his eyes flashed, and he could only follow Badi's instructions. To deliver enough nutrients for the Flash to wake up, stop the anesthetic drugs, and let the Flash wake up, but not too much strength to frequently release more speed force. But even so, the weak Flash opened his eyes in a daze and woke up. When he saw Badi for the first time, countless yellow arcs burst out of his body, his veins were about to burst, and he stared at Badi angrily, roaring, Bamulodi. The Flash struggled for a while, pulled his hands tightly, and shook his body in the air. Then, the arcs on his body quickly dissipated, and his blood mixed with the energy of the speed force was absorbed again through the pipe. His face was painful, and the absorbed blood was like a heart-eating worm eating his flesh and blood. When he was uncomfortable, his body became weak, the flickering of the arcs disappeared, his head lowered weakly, and his face was clear and gasping. I have done what I promised you. Now, it's time for you to fulfill your promise, Badi said indifferently. The Flash lowered his head, panting heavily. his pupils raised with difficulty, staring at Badi, and said with a forced sneer, "Aren't you Bamulodi omnipotent? Do you also want to go back to the past and change your regrets?" Badi was silent, staring at the Flash with cold eyes. The air was filled with silence. The faint cold air molecules spread in the air, quietly touching the skin, giving Badi and the Flash a slightly cold touch. After staring at the Flash in silence for a while, Badi slowly said, "I can find your relatives, all your relatives who are hostile to me. But I have never checked and never paid attention to where you put your relatives, because I don't want to implicate your family who also loves you, because of your stupid behavior. This is my respect for you who resist me. I can only deal with you. But it doesn't mean that you have the right to sneer at me here and not do what you promised me." Badi said slowly and threateningly, "Flash, do you mean to refuse to promise me?" Flash's face suddenly became ferocious. He gasped, gritted his teeth, and roared deeply from the depths of his throat, "Bay, Mu, Luo, D." Badi was silent, staring at Flash with an expressionless face. He was angry for a long time. Flash felt bitter and painful in his heart, and said helplessly and painfully, "I will help you go back to the past, but you have to promise me that you will never hurt other people's families, as well as my parents." Badi suddenly fell silent, staring at Flash with a frown, his eyes flashing with a strange color. "You mean, father, mother? Father, mother? Wasn't your mother killed by a burglar when you were a child?" All this time, he actually didn't know which world this was, because the parallel universes in the DC world were so numerous that it was unimaginable, definitely more than 52, and there was no way to know which world it was. However, there was only one rare world where the Flash's mother did not die. "Enough, Bamulodi, I promise you, I will obey your orders. My mother, father, please let them go." The Flash gritted his teeth. Tears dripped from his eyes, dripped onto the cold ground, and the tears penetrated the slightly cold mist on the ground, gently surging. Bamulodi's pupils shrank in horror, his hands and feet were cold, and a huge wave suddenly rose in his heart. Is chapter 240 a flashpoint? Badi's heart was filled with fear and he stared at the Flash with changing expressions. Basically, in all the worlds that are known, in the more detailed worlds of DC Comics, without exception, the Flash's mother would be killed by the Reverse Flash. The reason why the Flash could become the Flash was inseparable from the influence of the people around him, and the departure of his mother. There were only a few parallel worlds, where the Flash's mother did not die, and those worlds were not worth mentioning. In this world, the Flash's mother did not die, and the Flash still became the Flash, with a happy family, and was simply a big winner in life. If the Flash's mother did not die, it basically proved that the world he was in was not the main world of DC. Or was it his arrival that killed the birth of the Reverse Flash in advance, causing the Flash's mother to survive? Badi was not afraid or worried about these two situations. He was worried about another situation, that the Flash missed his mother too much and randomly traveled through time and was born in this world where his mother did not die. Badi had a gloomy face, suppressing the waves of fear in his heart. He could not help but recall and think about all the things he had experienced, recalling, from the depths of his brain, any trace of clues, every thought of his past, every woman he had kissed and touched, every person he had touched, every choice driven by his behavior, everything that changed. He woke up from Krypton, was reborn, grew up, learned, conspired, seduced, became a powerful general, started a revolution, failed, was ambushed by Jor-El with the Code of Life, fought his way out, and took a spaceship to Earth. Then he was captured. The images in his mind paused here. Could it be that he replaced Superman? Was he caught and studied by humans? Badi's eyes flashed with cold light, which was terrifying. The magnetic field of a planet-level strongman could not help but emanate around his body. Gravity twisted around him, his clothes trembled, and memory particles rippled on his body. The air nearby was bending, and the cold mist on the ground stirred away from his feet and spread far away. The air was extremely oppressive, like a mountain pressing down on this space. In this space where only the Flash was, he was in great trouble. His already extremely weak body, and the fear of being threatened by Badi, and the extreme mourning mood for his parents, were instantly affected by the violent fluctuations in Badi's heart, and the magnetic field pressure that leaked out for a while, and his chest felt like it was hit by a car. With a sound of puff, the Flash spat out a mouthful of blood, and the blood mist in the air, because of Badi's pressure, slapped towards the Flash's face again. His pale face was suddenly covered with bright red spots. He choked miserably, lowered his head, and fainted. The sound of spitting blood awakened Badi, who was deep in thought. Badi looked at the Flash with a calm face, controlled his mood, restrained his magnetic field pressure, and ordered Ferdinand Swan to inject nutrition into the Flash again to keep him awake. But for a moment, the extremely weak Flash could not wake up for the time being. After instructing Ferdinand Swan to keep an eye on the Flash, Badi began to think deeply again. His right hand supported his left hand, and his thumb kept rubbing against the palm of his hand. The frequency gradually increased, and then accelerated. His brain, comparable to a supercomputer, was working frantically, and the thoughtful look in his eyes burst out. Is it, or not? As for whether he replaced Superman and was captured by humans for a search, even if he had a brain computing power comparable to a supercomputer and wisdom, he could not calculate the result. He muttered to himself, and dug deep into his memory again. From the Underground Research Institute in Nevada, he first saw the Earth's native, the character of the DC world, Deathstroke. Badi thought deeply and calculated. If he had not come, would Deathstroke still give up being a soldier, become the king of mercenaries, then meet Lex Luthor and die together in the English Channel? The result, of course, could not be calculated, but in Badi's mind, it was a considerable possibility. After leaving the base in Nevada, he crossed most of the United States. He swam too far, and arrived directly at Gotham on the other side. He witnessed the death of Batman's parents. Was it because of his existence in Gotham that the butterfly had affected the fate of the Wayne family? Batman, who should have died, did not die, but his father and mother died, and his mother did not have the opportunity to become the Joker. Badi frowned tightly, puzzled. He thought about it one after another, but there was no clue. However, the recent birth of Atlantis and Paradise Island made Badi absolutely, with an 80% chance, that he was not wrong. To be honest, in DC Comics, there is no specific time when Paradise Island and Atlantis were born and shown to the world. But in this world, the time of birth seems to be just right. It happened that it appeared in front of the world, when the world was at peace. Then, the beating of Atlantis and Diana seemed to have a very good time. In the face of all the countries on Earth, the cooperation and marriage between the two ancient countries will even become a matter of course. Then the plot goes on. Among the various changes, humans participate in preventing the deep-level marriage between the two ancient countries, and the humans on Earth are not stupid enough to let them really cooperate. Just relying on these two ancient countries, sending people to appear in the United Nations directly, almost openly despises all countries, and directly entering a place like the United Nations meeting, will definitely be feared by humans on Earth. No country can tolerate this kind of hiding and entering the most heavily guarded United Nations meeting. This is already an act of contempt for all mankind. For a country, this ability is too terrifying, leaving humans without a trace of security, then bombing Paradise Island, preventing them from marrying, guiding, and Orm's ambition to kill Diana's mother, so that the two parties have already given up the idea of cooperation, and misunderstandings have developed into a war. Diana's temperament changed drastically, and she cut off the head of Aquaman's wife, Mera. Aquaman was angry, and Atlantis then fought with the Amazon warriors, leading to the destruction of nearby countries such as Britain, Ireland, and France, flooding into ruins, and causing the deaths of hundreds of millions of people. The Flashpoint plot began. The time and opportunity of all this seemed to be a perfect match. Therefore, the opening of the Flashpoint was really not casual, and it was suddenly run by the Flash. The Flash was just an inducement, giving the world another chance to make a choice. Countless choices, which led to the Flashpoint. If Badi hadn't appeared, the plot of this world should have developed like this. Badi took a deep look at the Flash, who was lowering his head. Then, he was silent, closed his eyes, and stood upright waiting for the Flash to wake up. When the Flash said HMM, and opened his painful and weak eyes, Badi also opened his eyes. He needed to make sure. Now, where is this world? In the Flash. He opened his mouth and asked. Chapter 241. The biggest enemy is the Flash. You know your future, right? Where do you know? Badi stared at the Flash hanging in the air. Before the establishment of the Justice League. The Flash answered from his nose. He had experienced that Badi had trampled New Guinea Island with 1 foot, killing 50 million people, and there were still tens of millions of people displaced and wailing. He had experienced that Badi could easily threaten his relatives. He no longer dared to disobey Badi casually, and could only answer with bitterness and powerlessness in his heart. Badi narrowed his eyes and thought. When the Flash saved his mother, the Justice League had been established for a long time, and there was even a Flash museum in Midtown. Obviously, the future that the Flash knew was another deformed future. In the future, have you replaced your consciousness? Badi asked. After asking this question, there was a reaction in his pupils, and he started to work, opening his transparent vision and carefully looking through the body of the Flash. This question directly made the Flash confused. What do you mean by you in the future have replaced your consciousness? The Flash's confused eyes were completely unable to answer. Through the perspective, he saw the Flash's physical reaction, and there was no unexpected reaction. The neural connection potential, brain synaptic current, body heart, blood flow, etc. all had no unexpected reaction. Badi pondered, frowned and thought, his pupils staring at the Flash. If this world is really the Flashpoint, and it is really the world that the Flash ran out to save his mother and changed, then the Flash who ran from the future will not reject it at all and replace the consciousness of the current Flash and let the consciousness of the Flash run out be the master. From the time Badi knew, he knew that the Flash who ran out of the Flashpoint was after Atlantis and Amazon went to war and sank Britain, Ireland, France, and the nearby countries into the sea. After fighting for a long time, he appeared in Midtown and replaced the consciousness of the Flash in this world. Badi's eyes were slightly thoughtful. From the time point of view, all this, until the Flash who ran out of the Flashpoint came to this world, there were still several years, almost more than 10 years. Because in the original Flashpoint, Superman was imprisoned for at least 30 years before the Flash arrived and rescued Superman from the underground base. This time is enough to prove that the Flash consciousness that ran out of the Flashpoint will take more than 10 years to arrive. Does that mean there is still time for the Flash consciousness to arrive? As long as he kills the current Flash, then this world will be stable and truly become a world. Instead of now, this world, in Badi's eyes, is already a world like fireworks and bubbles, which makes him feel suffocated. So my biggest enemy is you, Flash. Badi stared at the Flash and muttered to himself. After guessing that this is a world of the Flashpoint, he was horrified. Badi didn't belong to this world. He appeared in this world, and even he didn't know what was going on. But now, he is super developed, comparable to the calculation and wisdom of a super brain, and he came to a shocking conclusion almost in an instant. It was because of the appearance of the Flashpoint that a crack appeared in this world for some reason, so he just died and entered this world for unknown reasons. He exists because the Flashpoint world, where the Flash escaped and changed the world line, exists here. It is like a cancerous existence in the world, nailed to this world. Once the Flash changes back to the original world line again, then, will Badi, who does not belong to this world, still exist? All these thoughts are creepy, making Badi's goosebumps all over his body, and his pupils shrink. At this moment, Badi understood why the Flash failed to travel through time last time in New Guinea and run back to deal with him, and why he did not succeed in traveling through time. Why does the Flash need his consent to travel through time? Because he is nailed here like a tumor, and he should not have his own, and because of the special nature of his soul. Sangang once said that he has a special and unique growth, and this unique growth helps him to nail himself to this world line. But, what if the Flash desperately runs back to the normal world line? Even if his life is shattered to pieces, what will happen? Then the whole world will reject him and resist him. From the moment he came to this Krypton planet as a baby, he was directly rejected. The whole world is recovering and will squeeze out this cancer. At that time, Badi's fate will not only be squeezed out of this world, but it is more likely that he will be directly crushed and destroyed by the wheel of the entire universe, and no longer exist. This is the power of the timeline, the power of the entire universe time, which is simply not something Badi can contend with. Badi does not think that the only growth he has can resist. That is just growth. Without growth, everyone is an ant in front of the universe timeline. So, from the beginning, his enemy is not the ruler of Krypton, Zod, Jor-El, Superman, Amazon women, Atlantis, or the gods of Olympus. But, the Flash. The Flash, who can run back to the whole world and cause his existence to be annihilated, is his biggest enemy. As long as the Flash dies and this false Flashpoint world continues to develop normally, then the world where Badi exists will become the real world, just like the other world lines that the Flash ran back to change will become real. Badi's eyes flashed with cold murderous intent, his body floated up, his windbreaker fluttered behind his feet, and the cold mist on the ground rippled and dispersed. He flew in front of the Flash, who was hanging in the air, staring at his weak and miserable figure, his head bowed weakly, his face miserable and painful, and there was still blood that he had just spurted. Badi's big hand slowly stretched out, and the tiger's mouth stretched towards the Flash's neck like a giant python opening its bloody mouth. He pinched Barry Allen's neck, and as long as he squeezed hard, it would be enough to kill this weak and bloodless Flash. Badi's eyes were cold, and his big hand pinched, touching the sweaty skin of Barry Allen's neck. He used the back of his palm to slightly lift the Flash's chin, and saw the Flash's pale face with spots of blood. The two people's eyes met, and there was a collision of coldness and pain. Badi's big hand pinched the Flash's neck, silently pinching for a few seconds, and did not strangle him to death with force. Travel back to the past with me once. Chapter 242. Luthor. Emperor Building. Lex Luthor's office. Lex Luthor, who is on the second level of the power structure of the Badi pyramid, has an unusually large right to dispose of the business affairs of the Bamulodi Group. It can be said that Lex Luthor has made an indelible contribution to the development of the Bamulodi Group to the present, with the world's leading business exhibition. His office is only one floor below Badi. From the wide floor-to-ceiling windows of the office, you can see the magnificent scenery of the entire metropolis. Whenever the golden sunlight shines on the buildings of the metropolis, reflecting the beautiful city here, his eyes pass by, and when he sees all this, he can't help but radiate a faint satisfaction from his heart, and a smile is drawn at the corner of his mouth. Many changes and constructions in the metropolis and even in many parts of the world are changed and constructed by him. This behavior of changing the metropolis from being dilapidated and backward, changing the lifeblood of the entire world, and leading the world forward, makes his heart full of joy and a sense of accomplishment. He witnessed everything, from Bamulodi's non-existence to his miraculous existence, worshipped as a god, and now able to control the countries in the world. Although military operations were not within his scope of work, he could still see the entire operation from the clues of economic material mobilization. Your Majesty is going to take action. The sun shone in from the French windows, making his straight white suit slightly warm, and his round bald head made him feel slightly hot, his skin burning. He saw the entire operation of Bamulodi through some of His Majesty's material mobilizations, and guessed the entire operation. This was not difficult to predict at all. Bamulodi's army was not all composed of Kryptonians and superpowered people. A larger part of it was human soldiers with high-end technological equipment. Soldiers from more than a dozen countries accepted his rule, forming a huge army that was enough to conquer and attack any country. Lex Luthor looked at the computer screen with his wise eyes, and just a flash of thought, and then ignored it. He did not have the authority for military operations, and now he was a scientist in charge of the research of doomsday cell engineering, focusing on doomsday with greater gains. In his heart, the entire Earth is no longer as important as doomsday's achievements. The actual future evolution of doomsday makes him feel excited. This is a real monster weapon, a powerful weapon that can destroy God, which is terrifying. Although it has not been completed even 1%, according to Lex Luthor's prediction, this is a monster weapon that can be truly tested. With Doomsday, he can destroy anyone's rule at any time, the rule of any god. After closing some reports on the transfer of materials, He directly transferred the results of the recent dozens of doomsday cell tests to look at them, with a gloomy face, seriously comparing and thinking. The sun was slightly shining on the floating dust in the office. The whole office was quiet, with only the sound of Lex Luthor tapping the keyboard from time to time. With a bang, the door of the office was rudely opened by someone, and the visitor entered the office with a gloomy face, and then closed and locked it. Lex Luthor glanced at the visitor, and saw that it was Mike, with a strong body, supporting a wide suit, moving like a mountain. Luthor, who knew Mike's character well, was not surprised by Mike's behavior. He and Mike both disliked each other, and sometimes mocked each other, but it was tolerable, and not a problem. Luthor returned his gaze to his computer screen. Mike, with a gloomy face and a yellow paper bag of documents in his hand, walked to Lex Luthor's desk, and threw the paper bag of documents in front of Luthor's desk. "Luthor, you dare to betray His Majesty." Mike's face was gloomy, and his eyes erupted with a low roar of anger. Mike clenched his fists, and huffed with anger. He had a terrifying and strong muscular body like an angry bear, which made people feel that his clothes would explode because of anger. Luthor's expression froze as he looked at the computer screen, and his eyes moved to Mike's angry expression without any fluctuation. Mike would never call himself Luthor. Mike would always act like a senior, and call Luthor Luthor boy. His tone would always be mocking, jealous, envious, and hateful that he would be more valued by Battelle. Mike was very loyal to Badi. Mike, likewise, was not a rough man in appearance. At least, he had a unique and delicate heart and mind. Even if he really betrayed, he would not be angry at himself, but would report it directly, or kill himself cleanly and neatly. Anger is meaningless. Luthor glanced at Mike, and immediately felt that this Mike was strange and uncoordinated, and some of Mike's small movements were not seen in this angry Mike. For example, when Mike was dissatisfied, he would twitch the fat on his face, his eyes would be wide open, his teeth would bite hard on the left canine position, and his nose would hold his breath slightly when he inhaled, like a leopard about to fight and hunt, subconsciously preparing to pinch himself to death at any time. Luthor did not see these in the Mike in front of him. "Shouldn't you go back to Tegus country?" He retracted his eyes, picked up the yellow paper bag on the table, and read it calmly. Luthor's eyes quickly scanned the file information. This is about the collection of some advanced military equipment in the past few years, the whereabouts of warehouses, transportation routes, etc. Don't change the subject, Luthor. This is the route and location you provided to the African Death Bell in the past few years, so that he could rob our military equipment, including various Air Force Iron Man armor, land single soldier exoskeleton armor, sea battle whale and fish transformation suits, electromagnetic guns, and energy guns. No wonder the Death Bell has been able to cause trouble for our Bamulodi group, and robbed us of many things. It turns out that you are the insider. Mike was breathing angrily from his nostrils. His eyes were about to burst, his fists were clenched, and the joints kept clicking and making the clothes on his body feel like they were about to burst. It was quite scary. Luthor looked at the information and nodded slightly. The information was quite detailed, and there were also a few deliberately crude mistakes. If there is no accident, this thing can be obtained not only from His Majesty's Supreme Authority brain, but also from the Death Bell who participated in the robbery. Suddenly, I knew that this Mike was related to the Death Bell. Yes, it's me. Luthor put down the file and calmly admitted that he was the traitor. The air became slightly quiet. The sun shone in the air, and in the floating dust, there was a faint silence. Luthor's meaningful eyes calmly met Mike's eyes. And at this moment, after Luthor's calm admission, that meaningful look seemed to look into Mike's heart nakedly. The angry Mike suddenly changed from an angry expression to calm, and calmly looked into Luthor's eyes. The two seemed to spark a spark of wisdom in their eyes and fight each other. Chapter 243 Batman and Luthor. The office was quiet. Silence. The dust in the air, illuminated by the sunlight, floated slightly in the air. It seemed that, because of the gaze between the two, the floating of the dust in the air slowed down. Outside the window, from here, there was already a golden sunlight covering the prosperous metropolitan city. "You are not Mike," Luthor suddenly said in the gaze, telling the truth. Mike, who was looking at him, was not much shocked. Luthor was a truly smart man, with 9th level wisdom. There were few people on the whole earth who could compare with Luthor. From the beginning, he had analyzed the difference between Mike and usual through subtle language and actions, and concluded that this Mike was not the Mike he knew. "Who are you?" Luthor asked. His fingers tapped the table lightly, rubbing the smooth table with his fingertips, and looking at Mike with curiosity. "It doesn't matter." Mike's expression did not change. His eyes were as calm as always, and he was not surprised at all that Luthor could guess his difference. Because in his heart, this was Luthor. Similarly, it is also because of this overly clever wisdom that leads to personal extreme obsession, constantly challenging Superman, and constantly proving to the world that he is better and stronger than Superman. This is his impression of Luthor. Luthor is a billionaire, business tycoon, philanthropist, inventor, and politician. He likes to use strategic thinking to gain benefits, rights, and status. He is a human supremacist and the smartest person in the world. After 10 years, Luthor under Batman believes that Luthor will only become more paranoid and want to surpass Bamulodi, who is above him. From Luthor's dishonest behavior, deliberately supporting Deathstroke to become an armed force, we can see one or two. Luthor, he is not reconciled, but needs an opportunity to overthrow Bamulodi and make Bamulodi never recover. "Do you want an alien to rule the earth and treat humans as livestock?" Mike said in a deep voice. "Heh." Luthor suddenly laughed and said, "What about you? Are you fighting against the Bamulodi group because you don't want to see Bamulodi unify the entire earth, end the chaos between countries, and bring peace and prosperity to the earth? You are fighting against the Bamulodi group and deliberately ignore everything Bamulodi has done for the earth. Noise pollution, water pollution, air pollution, solid waste pollution, and so on. Everything the Bamulodi group has done has solved so many disasters created by humans themselves. You know that the country controlled by Bamulodi has no war and brings peace. It has sound laws, a prosperous economy, green vegetation, and people are full of happiness. It is the happiest country in the world. Everyone on the earth has cut off their heads to become a citizen of this country. In the future, the earth will be unified, there will be no so-called national disputes, and the world will be peaceful. Isn't this what the human beings on earth hope for? Why do you think that Bamulodi will treat the earth cruelly, just because of your own desires?" Luthor smiled faintly. He stood up from his office chair and walked slowly, facing the blazing heat of the sun, shining on his bald head and the warm white suit. He walked to the French window and looked at the metropolis in front of him, which was covered with a layer of golden light. He suddenly felt a little funny. What have these people who fight against Bamulodi done for this earth? They just want to fight for the sake of fighting. Why not look at the beauty of this world built by Bamulodi? How many people he has saved in the Middle East, how he has established a country, how beautiful wilderness forests have grown in that lonely desert state, how much pollution created by humans on the earth has been eliminated, how much he has cherished this earth, how many orphans he has adopted, how many welfare institutions have been established, and how a good living environment is provided for these civilians. Luthor is the one who has seen it all the way, and has seen more than anyone else. Just like the people who came out of the suicide slums in the metropolis, they followed Bamulodi and worshipped him as a god. Bamulodi, this name has become a utopia, the name of an ideal country, bringing them hope and beauty, allowing them to pursue and believe. Luthor looked at the scenery of the metropolis outside the window. The tall buildings stood under him, shining brightly. Compared with 10 years ago, the current metropolis is already the most famous and leading city in the world. All of this is brought by Bamulodi. Are you sure that the future in your mind will be better than the world peace brought by Bamulodi unifying the entire earth? Luthor put his hands behind his back, staring at the metropolis outside the window, and said lightly. Mike's heart sank. He almost thought that Luthor, a smart man, had become Bamulodi's lackey. However, the fact is that in his memory, in the future countless supervillains and alien creatures will harm the earth, and there will still be disputes between countries on the earth, which cannot be stopped. In his mind, the future is not so beautiful, even not as beautiful as the present. The future is an era where superheroes and supervillains emerge in an endless stream. Ordinary people live in dire straits. Sometimes, they don't even know where the disaster came from, and they are implicated by alien creatures and supervillains, and become innocent victims. It's nothing like now. After 12 o'clock in Gotham, there are still ordinary people who dare to go out and have nightlife. This is so safe that it's outrageous and touching that I want to cry. Ordinary people who come out after 12 o'clock have not been robbed, kidnapped, raped, or their organs cut and sold. This is a city that shocked Batman. Compared with the future Gotham in Batman's mind, the current Gotham is simply a paradise on Earth. This is the result of Bamulodi's transformation of Gotham. For hundreds of years, the Wayne family has not been able to deal with the sins of Gotham and bring beauty to Gotham. As a result, Bamulodi strongly supported the Gotham Police Department, provided funds and equipment, combined with the Gotham underground forces he ruled, controlled the Gotham regime, and used iron-blooded and bloody means from the official, private, and underworld underground forces to make Gotham a new look in a few years and become a city where ordinary people can have a safe nightlife. This could not help but make Batman feel inexplicably sad. Bamulodi's achievements were indeed outstanding. He completed the great cause that his family could not complete. His achievements could not be erased, and blood and light went hand in hand. But he just wants to be a god in your eyes, Mike said in a low voice. Bamulodi does not really love humans. He just needs humans to believe in him and love him. Bamulodi's heart does not have a broad love for humans. A god who brings peace and beauty to humans does not love humans. Superheroes love humans, but they do not bring peace and beauty to humans. It should not be gods who rule humans. I believe that it is extremely dangerous for the truth to be deified, because when facing myths, we have no chance of winning. Therefore, myths must be analyzed and restored to their true appearance. Only in this way can we believe in ourselves. Because for us, the only driving force that wants to become a myth is a truly important thing, Mike said in a low voice, looking at the back of Lex Luthor. The gold plated on the clothes behind him was particularly dazzling. This was said by the future Lex Luthor, who was facing Superman, who had become a god in people's mouths, solemnly and thoughtfully, maintaining his philosophy of fighting Superman all his life. Lex Luthor was a human supremacist. He was the smartest man in the world. This sentence, without a doubt, touched Lex Luthor's heart, causing him to tremble. He turned around and stared at Mike. So, this world needs to be unified. But, it doesn't need a god to rule. Lex Luthor stepped in front of Mike, with a mysterious smile on his face. He stretched out his right hand. Mike's heart trembled, and he looked at Lex Luthor solemnly. Similarly, Batman stretched out his right hand with a heavy heart. He shook Luthor tightly. So, you just want to rule. Lex Luthor. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 244, Traveling Through Time. 6 was built in 1925, connecting Provincetown, Massachusetts, and Brewster, New York. Later, people used the Roosevelt Highway to refer to this interstate highway. It was extended to Gregory, Colorado in 1931, and to Long Beach in the south and Beaufort, California in the west. In 1986, the Bamulodi Group funded the connection of Metropolis to the world's third longest highway. Today, from Metropolis, New Jersey, as the starting point, the sun in the sky, like a golden ball, emits dazzling light, burning the earth. The dark road surface, slightly illuminated by the sun, distorts the air. The hills of withered yellow vegetation on both sides of the road are rolling. This is already the suburban highway of Metropolis, connecting to Route 6 in the distance, a highway across the continent. A black dot flew from a distance in the sky, accompanied by the sound of sonic booms and screams, turned a corner in the sky, and came here. Badi, dressed in white, like a god, holding the flash in his hand, floated from a section of the road and descended. He looked far into the distance. The hot wind blew up the dust and rolled up a small tornado, which turned around with the wind and then dissipated, blowing up his worried windbreaker. There were few vehicles in the distance of the road, and there were only a few vehicles after hundreds of kilometers. This was the best place to run. From here on, I don't want any accidents, Badi said, and he finally decided to save Jenny first. He was not sure whether it was the Flash who ran out of the flashpoint, replaced his consciousness, or came here with his entire body, and then the Flash's body was erased by time. There were even multiple speculations. No matter which speculation was possible, it made Badi feel uneasy. The Flash ran around randomly, and his lethality was too great. It could change everything at will, and change everything. Badi's efforts to act for it had no meaning in the face of time. Without knowing what would happen, he still chose to continue his original plan. Badi looked at the Flash with cold eyes. After this incident, no matter which situation, the Flash must die. The Flash's steel prosthetic limbs stomped on the ground, connecting to his motor nerves, allowing him to move freely, but they were not his own legs after all, without flesh and blood, and there was a little difference and discomfort. The asphalt on the road was uneven, and there was gravel, and the sun was scorching hot, all of which the Flash's legs could not feel. The Flash looked at his legs gloomily and said coldly, "I'm not sure if it can be done. Although the metal prosthetics of these legs are stable in structure, they can't support the high-speed frequency of the speed force. I can fly and move with you. Plus the large amount of speed force stored in your mechanical metal prosthetics is enough to consume and shuttle." Badi put his hand on the Flash's shoulder and signaled to start. The Flash nodded expressionlessly, feeling Badi's palm clamped on his shoulder like an iron clamp, bringing a trace of pain deep into the shoulder bone, and he was silent. Then, he squatted down and made a running posture. The speed force arc flashed from his hands, and some gravel on the ground was hit and swung away. The scorching hot wind from afar was scraped away by the speed force arc. The arc instantly spread from the Flash's hands to his body, and then to Batista, who was holding the Flash's shoulders. With it, Batista's entire body, with a boom, the Flash and him were completely enveloped in the yellow arc. The two of them were like standing in the desolate world, and suddenly there was a crazy yellow thunder, which shook the world. Batista could feel that his whole body was wrapped by the speed force, a continuous ultra-high speed frequency, wrapping, penetrating his skin, and connecting to his body magnetic field. It started. The Flash said coldly, his eyes glanced at Batista, and hatred flashed in his eyes. His eyes looked forward again, closed his mouth, and gritted his teeth. Batista responded with a HMM from his nose. Suddenly, the whole scorching, desolate world was torn apart like cling film. A huge sonic boom was set off on the spot, and the crazy air wrinkled and squeezed, making a huge whistling sound. The air was exploded, and a sandstorm was set off. The two disappeared in an instant. The road ahead tore the surrounding air to both sides, like a sharp knife, piercing the ocean. The ground was left with a charred dark flash. In an instant, Badi squeezed out every bit of the body magnetic field from the cells, absorbed the sunlight energy, and accompanied by the speed force arc, went straight with the Flash, went straight on the road, and instantly pierced the air. The scenery on both sides was intertwined and quickly disappeared. The figures of Badi and the Flash, in the next moment, left New Jersey, and from the deserted road, there was a flash of people on both sides. A man stopped, puzzled for a moment, and then shook his head, thinking that he was dazzled and saw lightning. The next moment, the man was blown away by the violent oncoming airwave, and stuck to the roof of the RV. The RV flipped over several times, and he was horrified. He won't die. Badi saw that the Flash hesitated slightly, and was worried about passers-by, so he said, "It's true that he won't die, but it's very likely that he will spend the rest of his life lying in bed." How could an ordinary person be fine after being directly subjected to a supersonic sonic boom at such a close distance? The Flash obviously knew that, in order to avoid meeting other people again. He accelerated again in the next moment. The speed force rose to a speed that almost exceeded Badi's flying speed. Badi's eyes were stern, and he had almost reached his limit, but the speed of the speed force was still rising. With his strong body flying at super high speed, with his supervision, the environment on both sides had begun to become mottled and brilliant. Ah! The Flash gritted his teeth and howled. The metal prosthetic legs suddenly burst out with powerful speed force. The speed force arcs that had been hidden in the metal prosthetic legs were like a torrent, climbing up the bodies of the Flash and Battelle. The metal prosthetics dropped red mechanical metal from the thighs and calves. This was the most stable metal that could synthesize atoms at present, but it still couldn't withstand the high frequency of the speed force. It burned red and fell. The deepest mechanical bones began to vibrate with destructive atomic high frequency and began to vaporize. The next moment, the metal prosthetics popped and all vaporized and disappeared. A vortex suddenly appeared in front of him. The Flash was hugged from behind by Betrayal with a painful face and rushed into the space-time continuum together. Chapter 245 I traveled through time and space to save you. Night, late autumn. Metropolis, southern suburbs. The woods are quiet, the cool breeze of late autumn is blowing gently, and the insects are chirping, which makes the quietness of late autumn even more obvious. Suddenly, the air swirls and twists, and the ripples lift up the yellow leaves of late autumn. The space is torn in the woods, and a dark hole is spun out, and two figures fall out. The next moment, it closes quickly, and the dead leaves fall to the world. Badi is holding on to the range of vomiting. His retina seems to be dizzy and uncomfortable sitting on the bus, and his heart is beating like a drum. He supports himself with his hands and turns over in the air. His strong chest and abdomen keep taking deep breaths. His pupils expand and contract, and his blood rushes like the raging waves of the river. In the next moment, he controls it to calm the abnormality of his body. It is his first time to travel through time and space, and the staggered time shuttle makes him very uncomfortable. But his strong control is enough to control his body. In an instant, he adjusts his body, straightens his lumbar spine, and looks around. Here, is that the day? The cold wind of late autumn blew on Badi's cape, brushing against the touch that Badi squeezed out, and the black hair disturbed his heart. The leaves rustled continuously, and the insects around the woods were frightened by their sudden appearance and stopped, not daring to chirp. That's right, we can't go back. The Flash fell on the thick humus layer and dead leaves, smiling miserably. Without metal prosthetic legs to replace smile legs, without enough high-speed movement, the frequency movement can't penetrate time and space. You can only stay in this time and space, waiting for me to send you there again 10 years later. The Flash's metal prosthetic legs had been shaken and shattered into molecules when he came over. Now, he was lying on the thick humus layer without legs, and smiled with his mouth open, but there was a bit of misery in his smile. Don't worry, I still have dozens of pairs of metal prosthetic legs in my storage space. Badi glanced at the Flash lying on the ground. The Flash's miserable laughter stopped abruptly, like a crowing rooster being strangled by the neck. He closed his eyes unwillingly and fell silent. You rest here, for a while. Badi's eyes flashed fiercely, and a stream of blue cold air came out of his lips. In the Flash's struggling eyes, the freezing breath extended to the root of the Flash's thighs, froze up along the way, his lower abdomen, chest and abdomen, neck, and spread to his struggling head. The thick layer of ice covered him like a big ice block, stopping his body functions, and freezing him completely. In the late autumn woods, the chill immediately emitted a trace of coldness, dead silence and coldness. He couldn't take the Flash to save Jenny. Any slight change, any shouting, calling, would change the choice of every second now. The slightest change could not happen. He turned his head, penetrated his vision, and opened his long-range vision. His eyes shuttled through the woods in the dark night, whined and went straight to General Vic's camp. There were strong lights shining in the camp, making it as bright as day, and elite soldiers were guarding with guns. In a dark corner, there was some darkness. The light shone on the ground, reflecting the steel strips shining with the luster of fine steel metal. In the hazy and deep darkness, there was a terrifying monster. A monster nearly 10 meters tall stood here. Jenny's body was tall and ugly, with a thick, dark and rough cuticle, and white bone barbs protruding, with black blood constantly oozing out. The terrifying body was breathing slightly inside, and every breath was painful in the lungs, throat, and nose, and the air was trembling slightly. She was in the fine steel cage, lowering her head, her pupils deeply immersed in her own thoughts and memories, but her pupils were very dry, and bloodshot kept spreading in the whites of her eyes. Her eyelids had bones like sand, and every blink was like sand scraping on her eyeballs, bringing her pain like a knife scraping. Seeing this scene, Badi's breathing was suffocated, and his pupils shrank. Bitter emotions welled up in his heart, spreading through every blood vessel and all over his body. At this moment, his Kryptonian strong body, the body that could destroy the planet, felt the bitterness rising from his heart, and his body was weak. In all this, he could really feel Jenny's love for him. and all the pain Jenna's body was enduring. "I'm sorry, I'm here." Badi took a deep breath of the cold air around him, and his eyes opened and closed. His will was firm. He once said, "When I reverse time, I will save you from this moment. Give you hope. Give you laughter. Give you love. Now, I'm here." In the dark night, the stars are shining. In the woods, the cold wind blows. The fluttering windbreaker, the wild black hair, and the black eyes that travel through time and save the past in the dark night. Badi's body floated in the dark night, the air around him twisted, invisible, and disappeared into the night. He moved forward, a little bit of the world camp. In the southern suburbs of the metropolis, the stars were shining brightly in the dark night, and the cold wind was howling. Every time he got closer, Badi's heart seemed to be homesick. He was so afraid that all this would disappear in front of his eyes like a dream. Suddenly, Badi's figure hidden in the dark night stopped. Death Bell appeared in Badi's sight. He gradually approached the steel cage, stopped outside the steel cage, and looked up at Jenny in the dark. Badi had seen this scene in Death Bell's memory, and there was no difference. Badi stopped moving forward, and looked at all this. "I have a question for you, HMM." Jenny in the steel cage did not speak, because speaking was a torture and a pain. She could only hum deeply from her nose, and the sound shook the air. It was like facing the breath of a huge dinosaur. "Do you love Badi, or do you wish he would die?" Death Bell said. Badi saw his eyes and narrowed them coldly. He also saw Jenna's eyes shrink into a slit in an instant, and she was shocked by her heart being revealed. In an instant, the air seemed to burn, and a rolling heat wave emanated from Jenna's body, burning Death Bell's skin. "Ah!" She growled deeply, and a painful growl burst out from her throat. Now, with every word she spoke, muscles and bones crossed her throat, and the cells were torn everywhere, tearing her body. She didn't know how long she could hold on, how long she could last. Death Bell didn't stop talking. "You still love him, so you gave General Vic hope, so that General Vic never reported Badi's true identity, and let him exist in a false ambition and power desire. He thought he could restore his status through you. He thought he could restore his power through you. He thought he could gain supreme power through you. All this, he thought. All this, you tempted. Is it worth doing so much for Bamulodi?" After saying all this, Death Bell turned and left, ignoring Jenny's response. However, Badi saw it. Jenny was in the dark. Her huge pupils burst into blood. Blood flowed out painfully, and she hummed an unclear voice from her throat in deep pain. "It's worth it." Badi walked silently through the darkness, a smile on his face. "I'm sorry, I traveled through time and space to save you." Chapter 246 Rescue. The southern suburbs of the metropolis. The darkness is like a curtain covering a birdcage, covering the southern suburbs. It is quiet and gloomy. In a vast and dark land, a bright place rises. Here in the camp, strong lights shine. There are strong and elite soldiers patrolling with guns, looking out from the sentry post and being vigilant. In the camp, they use radar to detect the darkness of the southern suburbs. Only one dark corner is subconsciously forgotten by them. Even the patrolling soldiers are nervous when they patrol close, subconsciously slowing down their steps and not daring to disturb. In the darkness, the steel cage with cold light is like a huge giant lying in a coil, and the painful and burning breath slightly shakes the air. It is just a patrol with light footsteps. After a glance, I saw that the monster inside is still there. The scorching temperature from the steel cage burned the two elite soldiers and made them sweat profusely, dry their mouths, and their clothes stuck to their backs. It's really terrifying. After moving away and patrolling to another place, the soldier's heart was relieved. He swallowed a mouthful of dry saliva and said in shock, "Yes, it's a monster." The fellow soldier's eyes shrank tightly, wiped his forehead with his hand, moistened his palm, and shook his body involuntarily in the cold wind of late autumn. The two looked at each other and left with a sigh of relief. Badi walked forward in the darkness, twisting their vision with his body magnetic field and covering his own fluctuations. He looked at the background of their departure with cold eyes. He still remembered that this camp, which seemed to be a bright place rising in the darkness of the southern suburbs, was actually just a remnant of the past time. Here, a few days later, the death knell found him, attacked him, and was found by him. The whole camp was destroyed by Jenny, and no one survived. Badi floated straight to the edge of the steel cage. The scorching temperature was like facing the crater of a volcano, and the air was burning hot. Jenny fell asleep, lying on the ground with a huge face. Her brows were uneasy, and her huge breathing was like a snoring of thunder, accompanied by the pain brought to her by each breath, and she was whimpering softly. Badi watched quietly, his eyes were bitter, and his heart was very uncomfortable. The person who loves him should not be so painful. After a long time, Badi recovered, calmed his heart, and his eyes were calm, using the magnetic field of his body to distort his vision, affecting the figure of radar. He began to move, his fingers trembled slightly, and a torrent of nanometers gathered and appeared from his fingertips, gathering into particles that ordinary people can see with their naked eyes, gathering into grey mist, as if seeing countless locusts from a distance, coming from afar, covering the sky and the earth, and appearing at his fingertips. 1 nanometer is equivalent to 4 times the size of an atom, which is much smaller than the length of a single bacterium. A single bacterium cannot be seen with the naked eye. The diameter measured by a microscope is about 5 microns. Assuming that the diameter of a hair is 0.05 millimeters, it is evenly cut into 50,000 strands along the axis, and the thickness of each strand is about 1 nanometer. In other words, 1 nanometer is 0.000001 millimeter. This is something that ordinary people cannot see with their naked eyes. In Badi's hand, there are so many nanoparticle control flows that ordinary people can see with their naked eyes, which have exceeded billions, forming nanoparticle mist flows, which appear at his fingertips. Badi's heart was slightly raised, and his face was stern, and he stared at Jenny. He flicked his finger, and a nano mist flow suddenly spread out. Suddenly, it was invisible to the naked eye, but in Badi's eyes, it was densely packed in the air, and penetrated into the dark steel cage. The nanoparticles moved forward towards the darkness, attached to Jenna's body, and poured into her mouth and nose. Jenna's huge head lying horizontally suddenly raised up, her face tightened, and she made a sour expression of about to sneeze, frowning her uncomfortable eyebrows. The nanoparticle control flow that suddenly entered her body made her hair follicles itchy, and her body subconsciously reacted and wanted to sneeze. In the end, she did not sneeze, but just raised her head for a while, and then lay down again, frowning and resting painfully. If it is not necessary, she will not move, because it will hurt. Badi's heart fell slightly, his face relaxed a little, and he took out a tablet from the storage space, and began to operate. His eyes were like torches, penetrating his vision. With his microscopic vision, he regulated the flow of nanoparticles, and distributed them to Jenna's whole body, controlling the nuclear energy change reaction in Jenna's body, and reducing her pain. The nanoparticle control flow in Jenna's body cells and nerve transmission formed a stable control network, taking over the storage energy of the fission cells, reducing the fusion reaction, and slowing down her body growth. Immediately, Jenna's frowning expression slowly relaxed. Obviously, her pain was gradually decreasing, making her feel a little more comfortable. Badi breathed a sigh of relief. He made a lot of preparations to save Jenny. As long as no one harassed him, with the advanced technology of Krypton and a clear understanding of the fusion reaction of nuclear energy, there was no possibility of failure. Without any accidents, Badi gradually used his penetrating vision and microscopic vision to gradually reduce Jenny's pain a little bit, making Jenny feel better. Saving Jenny is not just coming here and simply taking her back. Badi needs no changes in this world, or very few changes. At least he needs to replace Jenny, and then let his original self experience what he experienced, and perfectly repeat all the scenes that happened at the beginning. He needs to see Jenny explode next to his original self, and he himself in the sea of fire, holding the ring engraved with their names, so that his original self will have the desire to travel through time and space to save Jenny, no matter how many mountains and seas there are, to be considered a perfect success. If he had been aware of it at the beginning, and doubted Jenny's love for him, and his original self did not have the idea of saving Jenny, then he would be finished. Saving Jenny is a very delicate matter, so delicate that the explosion of the bionic body has to go through tens of millions of calculations by Hera. The moment of the bionic body explosion, the expression, etc., must be extremely real. Fortunately, at that time, I did not have microscopic vision and could not see the program control deep in Jenna's bionic body cells, which made all this a success. "Jenny, take a nap," Badi said softly. Jenny seemed to have heard this and wanted to respond slightly. Then, Badi tapped the tablet screen with his finger, and Jenna's head was slightly off the ground and lay heavily on the ground, breathing evenly and long, without pain. Badi glanced at the camp illuminated by the strong light, showed his figure in a dark corner, stepped into the steel cage, and immediately puffed up his cheeks and spit out a frozen breath from his mouth, completely freezing Jenny. The cold air spread fiercely, and when the soldiers were about to notice the abnormality, Jenny had been frozen into an ice cube by Badi. In the blurry flash, Jenny, who turned into ice, disappeared. The bionic body Jenny was placed out of the special space by Badi. Everything around was getting hot again. Jenny frowned in pain and lay down again in the steel cage. After doing all this, Badi held the tablet and sank into a nearby forest, monitoring and controlling the bionic body Jenny, waiting for his arrival in a few days. Chapter 247 Bury and the Mutation. It was a dark night, and it was quiet. The stars were brighter than any other day. In the woods, on a thick layer of humus, a block of ice that froze the Flash was lying on the ground, cold and quiet. The cold air was spreading dimly, stimulating the surrounding insects and crickets to flee. For a moment, it was quiet here. The Flash's struggling expression was frozen vividly. He had been frozen for several days, and finally waited for this moment. In the distance, in the darkness of the southern suburbs, in the camp, there were explosions, roars of artillery, and sounds of pain. The thick ice that froze the Flash, with yellow arcs of electricity, suddenly emerged from the darkness, hitting the cold water vapor molecules. Bang! The Flash's struggling head suddenly became blurred, and yellow arcs of electricity appeared frequently, accompanied by the sound of gunfire in the distance, and there was a bang. Only at this time, the abnormality that occurred could make Badi's eyes leave his position for a while, and no longer hide his figure for several days, using his powerful eyesight to observe the monster and himself, in order to maintain the original historical trajectory. The Flash's face was pale and cold, his face was trembling, and he exhaled cold air, which froze into his bones, stimulating him to the point that he could not bear it. The only weakness of the Speed Force can be regarded as the extreme low temperature, which causes the Speed Force to be inert and weak and unable to resist. The Flash lay on the ground, with only his head covered by the cracked ice. His eyes were calm and firm. He turned his head to look at the darkness in the distance, and heard the sound of gunfire. He and Bruce had been here before, investigating everything about Bamulodi, and knew that an American general would die here, and knew the specific time. Until this moment, the Flash used the remaining Speed Force to break free from the ice, but he only broke free from his head, and was able to breathe. But this was enough. The Flash's eyes were slightly cold, and he didn't have much time left. Ugh. He gritted his teeth, really gritted his teeth, and used his lower teeth to bite the back of his front teeth, biting the root of the tooth to bleed. Blood immediately flowed from his gums in his mouth, staining his chin red. The Flash's eyes flashed with pain. He held the front teeth he had bitten off, his mouth was bloody, and his eyes kept looking at the tree, calculating the angle, strength and direction of the impact. "Bruce, you must find," he prayed in his heart. When they came to the southern suburbs of the metropolis, they did not come to this place. Now he could only pray that the information he left behind would be noticed by Bruce. Suddenly, Barry's face blurred, and he kept shaking his head, flashing a faint yellow arc. The moment he stopped, the Speed Force in his mouth wrapped around his front teeth and shot towards the tall red oak tree. The front teeth slashed across the red oak trunks with a bang, leaving deep scratches on several red oak trunks. The front teeth collided with each other on several red oak trees, forming a simple circle of hair between the scratches. Finally, the front teeth were deeply embedded in the last red oak trunk. Seeing the accurate information, Barry was slightly relieved. The muscles on his face twitched, and blood kept flowing from his gums. He bit off another front tooth with his lower teeth. The gap between his teeth was full of blood, and his resolute expression could not help but have a hint of pain. This is not enough. Bruce can't pay attention to such a long distance. Barry said silently in his heart, and at the same time he needed to divert Bamulodi's attention. He aimed at the tallest tree nearby, the trunk of which required 2 or 3 people to hug it completely. His head became madly blurred again, and the arcs of electricity with a hissing sound frequently gathered on his 2 parts. He pursed his lips tightly. Bang! The front teeth, protected by the speed force, exploded with a supersonic sound and shot towards the tree that 2 or 3 people hugged. The front teeth protected by the speed force were excited and hit the tree trunk. With a huge explosion, the entire front teeth were blasted by Barry using the speed force, and the explosion produced a huge reflected impact, which immediately blew a large piece of the thick tree trunk, revealing the white and tender cooked meat. The tree trunk could not support it, and slowly tilted, and smashed directly towards the ice on the Flash's body, raising a large piece of dust mixed with the cold air. Puff! Barry suddenly felt the impact, and groaned heavily, his face painful. The tree trunk smashed the ice into several cracks, and a mouthful of blood spurted out. His face became even paler and weaker. The blood from his lips splattered on the leaves and ice, flowing along the corners of his mouth. Shocking. If Badi didn't notice the first incisor of the Flash, because he was shocked by the scene, then the second incisor caused a sonic boom and a tree fell. Even under the sound of gunfire, that sound could not be covered up, and escaped from Badi's ears. Badi calmed down, because he was shocked by his original self. His eyes swept over the position of the Flash, and saw that the Flash wanted to use the tree to smash the ice. He saw that the Flash was fainting and dying, and his body had little speed. After confirming that he had no ability to escape, Badi's sight turned back to the scene. When he saw this original self, Badi was very shocked. Because in the dark southern suburbs, a transparent humanoid object that was like airwaves and formed a substantial outline. From the dark horizon, it slowly walked over, with an extremely strange figure outline, just like a ghost in the night. This brought Badi an incomparable shock. Could it be that I'm this transparent humanoid object that is like airwaves and forms a substantial outline? What is this? He stared at his past self with shocked pupils, dully looking at him, not seeing a trace of flesh and blood, Kryptonian blood, only the outline that was like air, constantly twisting. Then what shocked him even more was that General Vic and all the soldiers in the camp reacted as if they saw their original self, wanting to capture him, without feeling at all that this was a transparent humanoid object with a substantial outline formed by air. This made Badi terrified. This is my past. This was the first time Badi truly felt what Sangang said, that he had a unique characteristic, that time could not limit him, space could not limit him, and the universe could not limit him. This was the first time Badi felt this shocking phenomenon, and deeply understood what his unique characteristic soul was. He only exists in the present, not in the past or the future. Time just imprinted a human form with the same behavior, based on his behavior, affecting everyone's vision, brain, and even soul to maintain the stability of the entire universe. Badi suppressed his shock and controlled the bionic body Jenny, just like before. When Jenny exploded, after the huge explosion, the airwave formed a transparent humanoid object with a solid outline and slowly left in sorrow. Badi felt like he had watched a thrilling movie, which made him feel uneasy for a long time. Chapter 248 The Flash lost 2 front teeth. In the desolate darkness, the flames flickered. The explosion of the bionic body Jenny, the past self, a human-shaped silhouette like air, with grief and pain, slowly walked away towards the bright lights of the metropolis, with heavy and sad steps. There were no accidents. Everything perfectly replaced the original Jenny. Except that Badi was shocked several times, because of his own existence characteristics. Everything was the same as before. Those who deserved to die in the camp died, and those who didn't want her to die also died. The real Jenny, whose body had been controlled by Badi's nanoparticle flow, was frozen and sleeping in the space he prepared. Badi thought about it, and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Everything was normal. He was well prepared, stripping out any environmental calculation simulation from his memory bit by bit, and simulating everything with more than trillions of calculations, the angle of the explosion, the perfect replacement of the bionic body Jenny, and the trillions of nanoparticles created to control the nuclear energy of Jenna's body. It was a natural success, without any accidents. The so-called accidents were just insufficient preparations. Badi was hiding in a corner of the darkness. He looked far away and gradually saw himself sinking into the darkness, heading towards the lights of the starry fence of the metropolis. The night wind blew coolly, swaying the firelight. He floated his body, and the cool breeze blew gently, brushing across his slightly indifferent face. His figure flew and floated horizontally. Badi looked down at the Flash struggling to break free from the ice under the fallen tree trunk and lush branches. The Flash was like a soldier on the battlefield, with a pale face, blood at the corners of his mouth, without legs, and crawling forward unwilling to die. His speed was dozens of times faster than that of an ordinary person, just like a spirit snake in the dark night, his hands flashing weak arcs. Swoosh was dozens of meters away. His heart was determined to escape, and he scratched his body with blood marks, and crawled out of the mud road from the ground. When Badi coldly descended from his head, staring at him indifferently, the Flash smiled miserably. I shouldn't have brought you back. Do you know how serious the consequences of changing history will be? Devils and tyrants, like you should live with eternal regrets. He ran away without any motivation. He saw Badi floating in front of him. The Flash was lying on the muddy ground. His face was pale, and his two front teeth were leaking. In addition to the miserable situation, it was also funny that the front teeth were missing. Originally a sunny handsome guy, he was transformed into a funny character with two front teeth missing, and a black hole in his miserable smile. Anyone who saw this scene would burst into laughter at the first time, instead of feeling empathy and sadness. Badi looked at his black hole front teeth strangely and coldly. He had a high sense of humor, and he couldn't help but feel weird when facing the miserable smile of the Flash without two front teeth. How can I compare to you, who caused the death of hundreds of millions of people just to save my mother? Badi glanced at the Flash with black holes in his front teeth and a miserable smile, and his mouth twitched, and he replied lightly, no one knows better than the Flash the sequelae of time travel, time change, and history. But for his own sake and the feelings he had for his mother at the moment, he ran back to change the established fact of his mother's death, without any plan, and without any preparation, and just like that, the flashpoint happened. The battle between Aquaman and Diana caused the death of hundreds of millions of people. It also led to my arrival. If I hadn't come, there would be even more casualties. Because of Badi's arrival, the whole world formed an alliance to fight against him, and Aquaman and Diana were unable to kill each other, and they embarked on another change in trajectory. A way for Badi to face the conquest of the whole world, to fight against the whole world, and to conquer the Earth. Another flashpoint. Hearing Badi talking about his mother, Flash got furious. His muddy hands were tightly clenched. His pale face flushed with blood. His leaky front teeth roared, you said you wouldn't deal with my family. Although Flash didn't know Badi's other meaning, he obviously regarded this sentence as another threat to him, which made him furious. I'm not interested in your family, Badi said coldly, then pinched Flash's neck, took him up, and disappeared in the night. 3 days later, a small island in the Atlantic Ocean, the sun was shining brightly, and a halo was shining. Flash reinstalled the metal prosthesis and stepped on the soft beach. The metal prosthesis stepped deeply into the sand and sank into the ankle. He pulled it up again and twisted the ankle joint. The metal light shone under the reflection of the sun, and it was very flexible. I have to say that Bamulodi's prosthetic technology is indeed extremely powerful. This will give the disabled people in the world a chance to become normal again. His skills and technology are great, but as a person, he is not that great. The Flash watched the waves. His mind was heavy, and he was worried about where Bruce would find it. If not, then his two front teeth would be meaningless. Until now, his front teeth are still leaking. Then, he was worried that when he returned to the future, would Bamulodi be angry with the entire Earth? After all, the entire Earth used nuclear bombs to bomb him. It feels that the entire Earth, unless half of the population died, cannot comfort Bamulodi's tyrannical heart that was bombed by the nuclear explosion. Of course, this is the Flash's guess about Badi. In fact, Badi's methods are much milder. Otherwise, it would not take 10 years to gradually train a team to take over and control most of the countries on the Earth. It is to ensure a smooth transition to his rule. As long as the civilians do not foolishly resist to the death, They will not have to worry about their lives, and their lives will not change much. On the contrary, it will be better. But all the superheroes, the members of the Justice League, have never understood Badi. For them, the future era with supervillains and superheroes is their future, not the future of ordinary people. Why not just leave him here? Barry suddenly had an idea. Why not just leave Bamulodi here, contain him here, and trap him here? At this time, a sonic boom rang out in the sky, and a white figure, like a diving fighter, left a trail, and landed next to the Flash. I can see the thoughts on your face even from 7,000 kilometers away. Bamulodi's figure blocked the sunlight, and descended in front of the Flash. The sea breeze blew, and the cold eyes on his face understood the Flash's thoughts. The Flash's heart sank, and he gathered his thoughts. The Speed Force is enough. Go back to the future. Chapter 249 Tyrant Prologue. The loneliest and most deserted highway in the world. Highway 50 in the United States. The sun was blazing in the sky, scorching the asphalt road in late autumn, and the grey-black road surface was burning hot and dry. The dry wind blew from behind Badi, blowing the chin of his windbreaker tightly against his calves. I don't want any accidents to happen. He needed to wake up Flash classmate, this restless guy, who often doesn't learn his lesson. If I tell you to make trouble, I will kill all your family. Is it that my fist is not big enough, and I can't kill your family, even if I blow up the continent or the planet? Or are you invincible and immortal? Or are you the designated protagonist of a novel or comic, who will never die, and will always escape danger, so you keep doing things that want me to kill your family? Do you think I can't do it? The impression I give you is not cruel enough, right? Badi looked into the distance. His face was indifferent, and he said lightly, the threat in his words was revealed. If this trip back to the future, what changes will happen? Haha. Flash's face changed ugly. He saw the warning on Badi's face. He had no doubt that, if he had any vision, and returned to the future, not only would he die, but his family would also be implicated. Moreover, as long as Bruce noticed the message he left, the future would almost certainly change, and the change would give them a chance to fight against Bamulodi. Flash's heart sank, and then his shoulders were pressed down heavily. Snap, the big hand on his shoulder was like an iron clamp, slapping it down, clamping his shoulders, and making his body bear a burden of tens of thousands of pounds. Go back. Badi said coldly behind him. Flash's face was gloomy, and he controlled the metal prosthesis with worry and helplessness in his heart, squatting down and making a running posture. Now, he could only hope that Bruce noticed the message he left, noticed that his front teeth were left on the tree trunk, and knew that he had traveled through the past, and left the information about his front teeth to remind himself of his behavior. After Flash was worried and warned by Badi to concentrate, his hand pressing on the hot asphalt road began to emit yellow arcs, and the dust around him began to rise slightly without weight, and the arcs made a crackling sound. The yellow arcs spread, like dozens of electric snakes, quickly spreading and crawling to Badi's hands, passing through his arms, chest pain, and covering his whole body. The two of them were on a deserted road, with yellow arcs swirling. The sun was burning, scorching the asphalt road, and distorting the air. In the next moment, there was a sudden explosion with a loud noise, and a white sonic boom circle appeared in an instant. The air wrinkled, squeezed, exploded, and formed waves. The dust hesitated for a second, and then suddenly surged like a wild wolf, raising a huge layer of dust. The asphalt road was left with a few arcs flickering, and the road was charred and extended all the way to the distance, like a sharp knife carrying yellow arcs piercing the waves of the sky and the earth, making the sky and the earth seem to be torn into two sides. Once again, Badi felt the speed force acting on him. The strong and high-speed vibrations connected his body's magnetic field, coordinating with his high-speed flight, plus the high-frequency carrying speed of the speed force. This speed has completely surpassed the speed of a planet-level powerhouse like him. This speed force speed has completely reached the extreme speed. When it runs to the end, the vibrations are the source of mastering time, the speed force wall. This speed force controls the shuttle of time, changes the past and the future, and changes everyone at will, making everything follow the rules, and evolve according to the rules in a reasonable manner. Changes such as flashpoints are extremely terrifying. when the surrounding environment began to turn into light spots and lines, and Badi's sight could no longer keep up with this vibration. Badi glanced at the Flash. The Flash's metal prosthesis was once again fiery red and hot, and the bones inside the prosthesis began to vibrate and turn into atoms, dissipating into nothingness. In front of them, a space-time continuum that distorted time and space suddenly appeared. Just like when they arrived, Badi, holding the Flash without legs, rushed into the time tunnel from behind. The time tunnel appeared, Badi holding the Flash, and rushed in. The time tunnel was turbid, with unclear boundaries, and blurred high-frequency images, just like ordinary movies and TV shows. Suddenly at a speed of 10 million times, a whole 100-episode TV series was played in 1 second. Only those with super speed can choose and see the points with such super high frequency, and choose the right time to cut in. Therefore, it is normal to have motion sickness, and vomiting for the first time, and feel uncomfortable. Even Badi, with such a strong vision and body, couldn't help but feel nauseous and uncomfortable. If it were other ordinary people, they would be easily weak. The second time, Badi had experience, so he didn't look at the surrounding images again. In fact, the surrounding images couldn't be seen. They were hazy and super high frequency. Even with supervision, it would only make people uncomfortable. Badi raised his eyebrows, feeling the speed force enveloping him, automatically pulling him to his own path, to his own position. Being in his original era, there was an extra attraction. When he came to this time and space channel for the first time, Badi felt that the speed force enveloping him, even without the control of the Flash, would follow his original era, subconsciously letting him return to the right track, not letting him fall into other eras and affect the stability of the universe. This was the speed force's self-regulation of Badi's soul, letting him return to the right track, and not causing greater changes and damage to the universe. This was originally a good thing. But, in the next moment, a change occurred. In this fast time and space tunnel, the Flash, who was held in front of him, there was actually a pair of legs at the base of his legs, and the hazy image, like a projection, projected his legs flickering. The Flash's legs kept flickering back and forth, flickering in the blurred illusion and reality. The Flash was delighted. Bruce knew that he had found his information. They finally had the ability to fight against Bamulodi. Finally, in just a short moment, the Flash's legs had become real, and crazy yellow arcs of electricity burst out from his legs. What have you changed? Badi's eyebrows were stern. What did the Flash change that caused his legs to not be destroyed by himself in New Guinea? So his broken legs returned to normal. I don't know what has changed! Exclamation mark. Badi's heart was still, and he was angry and murderous. Flash, you are looking for death. From today, all superheroes, including their families, will have no chance to survive. Crazy arcs of electricity burst out from the Flash in an instant, and the Flash's figure was blurred, directly shaking the atoms, and passing through Badi's arms. Badi's eyes were cold, and his arms tightened, catching nothing. The Flash was surrounded by crazy arcs of electricity, and his legs had blurred and disappeared. He ran at super high speed, and ran out of the time tunnel one step ahead. Badi followed in an instant, with a cold and murderous aura, and rushed out of the time tunnel. Chapter 250 Flashpoint Flash. US Route 50 is one of the most desolate roads in the United States. It crosses the express delivery area, and is sparsely populated. The famous Death Valley is also located on this road. Death Valley is the hottest and driest area in North America. It is full of wind and sand, deserted, with yellow sand dunes rising and falling continuously, with dry old tree roots digging into the yellow sand, mottled cliffs and steep terrain. It is also the lowest and driest area in North America. The scorching air twisted, the asphalt road was baked dry, and the heat and turbulence twisted. Above the road, the air suddenly twisted and rippled. A vortex of space-time tunnel appeared. The Flash was covered in yellow arcs, his legs were blurred, and he ran out of the space-time tunnel. His footsteps paused for a moment, and he stood on Route 50 in Death Valley. The dry and hot asphalt road burned his bare feet. The yellow arcs on his body seemed to be sleeping, faintly pulling and scratching his skin, trying to hide back in his body cells, and shrinking from the pores. In an instant, a sudden frenzy of information, the information that had been changed in the past 10 years flashed in his brain. In addition, from the future of time and space, it was even more silent and colorless. A future self's will was replaced. Without any signs. Just like this, defenseless, this Flash was no longer the same person. His pupils shrank into a dot, extremely shocked. But there was still no time to carefully check the sudden extra memory and everything that happened. The Flash quickly stared at the back. In the time and space tunnel, a tall figure, like a demon in the dark, rose from the abyss, stimulating his back with goosebumps like a thorn, making him feel cold and terrified. In an instant, the body of the Flash surged with more yellow arcs, holding his breath with joy, staring with eyes turned around, and left in an instant, running out of a phantom, running madly towards the infinitely far end of the oil asphalt road, where the sky and the earth connected, leaving a charred mark on the ground, and crystallized fine sand. Behind the Flash, in the time and space tunnel, Badi jumped out of the space-time tunnel. He was tall, and his white windbreaker was fluttering and whistling. The magnetic field released by his body overwhelmed the heaven and earth. The twisted air in the sky was whistling and wailing, like an angry demon appearing from the darkness to the bright world, wanting to destroy the world. Bang! The tarmac road on Highway 50 broke immediately, and a 200-meter cracked pit sank into the ground. Cobwebs were everywhere, and yellow sand rose up to the sky 200 meters away. The whole Death Valley was yellow like waves, and everyone was horrified and moved away from Badi. He stepped hard on the tarmac road to stop his imbalance from the space-time tunnel. Red veins were imprinted around his eyes, burning and twisting the air around him crazily. Badi's body quickly floated up, and the hem of his windbreaker was whistling crazily, as if he was horrified by the anger of its owner. Look up. A pair of red eyes immediately shot out thermal sights as thick as calves, piercing through the air. The air rippled, and was directly squeezed and exploded, causing the sound of an explosion. The thermal sights suddenly bombarded the Flash's position. The thermal sight flames, which were more intense than the surface temperature of the sun, submerged the Flash's afterimage, and the ground was directly scorched and melted, melting a large lava hole, and countless crystals formed on the edge, looking for death. Realizing that the Flash had run away from his original position, the red veins around Badi's eyelids became even more ferocious. As Badi raised his head, the thick thermal sights swept up along the road, chasing behind the yellow arc. The thermal sights were like the light of the end of the world, sweeping up this Highway 50. In the middle of the road, a flaming lava ditch was directly swept up, and the hot flowing lava kept rolling in it, and the edges were crystallized. The thermal vision chased the Flash furiously, and in an instant it had already crossed over 300 kilometers. The Flash's body with yellow arcs of electricity was getting farther and farther away in Badi's eyes, and had already reached the intersection of the sky and the ground. The thermal vision swept all the way up from the ground, melting the entire Highway 50 into flaming lava, and destroying it in an instant. Near the end, the thermal vision was even more puffy, and once again intensified, and burst out with unparalleled scorching vision, deep red, making Badi's eyes feel burning, and madly chasing the Flash's back. At the end of the horizon, the yellow arc passed by in an instant, and the figure finally disappeared from sight. The thermal vision swept up and directly swept into the sky, and the red rays cut through the sky. At this moment, the time it took to happen was hundreds of times faster than the time it takes for an ordinary person to blink. The Flash had already escaped, and Highway 50 was swept by the thermal vision like a lava ditch, completely destroyed. At this time, it emitted a burnt smell, the baking of flames, and the smell of asphalt on the asphalt road. The surrounding yellow sand was baked into crystals by the scorching heat. The hot line of sight was slicing the sky, shrinking and sharp, and was taken back by Badi. He closed his eyes, and the red and blue veins around his eyelids disappeared and returned to normal. After warming his eyes slightly, Badi opened his eyes, and the cold and angry eyes stared at the horizon where the earth and the sky connected. Something strange and familiar wanted to invade the memory of his brain. This was the memory of the 10 years of change. The Flash ran through several states in an instant, ran directly across the ocean, and stopped on the African grassland. The sudden arrival of the Flash scared the cheetahs and a group of water bucks in Africa, who were preparing to hunt, and made them run away. The Flash was panting heavily, his hands on a bare tree trunk, his eyes shrank into a point in horror, and his body was sweating profusely. The light of death had been chasing him just now, and the burning heat like thorns on his back almost shot him to death, which frightened him. At the same time, it also shocked him, and he was shocked and scared to sweat. He had just finished paying respects to his mother, and was so sad that he decided to run back to change history and bring his mother back to life. The chaos of the Speed Force caused by the opening of the time tunnel and Badi's existence directly brought the Flashpoint, who would arrive more than a decade in the future, here in advance. It was not until this time that he checked his memory in detail, staring with horror, stiffening his body in disbelief, and covering his head in fear and screaming. The Justice League no longer exists. Superman died as a child. Victor did not become Cyborg. Aquaman was nailed to the Trident by Bamulodi. Hal died in space. Diana was captured. Batman abandoned his body and went deep into the enemy camp. Luthor, Captain Ice, Shazam, Constantine. Many heroes and villains have their fates changed. New Guinea Island was once trampled and sunk by Bamulodi, killing 50 million human lives. Bamulodi is about to rule the world. Who is this? Why would such a person appear? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.